We'll start. Apologies and reasons for absence.
Councillor Sykes is on holiday.
Yes.
Okay with that?
Are we happy with that?
And
Yeah. Reason accepted. Good.
Absolutely.
PCS have sent their apologies. They are unable to attend due to other commitments.
Right.
And our community warden I haven't heard from.
Okay. You can go report from them.
I've got PCSO's report, which I should bring up with the
Okay.
information,
That's
but
good.
nothing from the community warden.
Okay, good. So declaration, excuse me, declaration by members of any interest, pecuniary or other than pecuniary. Do we have any? Yes, George.
Number 9.
Number 9, that's the British Legion one.
No. Wholesale preschool travel.
Oh yes, okay. Because of your daughters at this involved. Okay. Right, thank you. Now, I suppose that is a pecuniary interest because you'll have
Could
to
cost
pay.
me money.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, indeed. That's a pecuniary interest. So, I think, taking my mind back those years ago, you can't vote on it. You don't have to leave the room.
Okay.
I think that's what we've got in our procedure.
But Mr. Chairman, you can speak on it if I'm correct.
Can speak on it, yes.
Yes.
Having declared that it's of pecuniary interest, we may of course choose not to do so. Right, that's the first one I can remember us having. Okay, and no others? No. So we're not looking for dispensation.
No, sorry, there is, in the matters right, there's a spelling error at 3830. Born, last line of 3830.
No, that's when we get to the
sorry,
next
I got
one.
that in there.
Oh yeah, there are some. I know there are
Yeah,
some,
yeah,
but we
yeah.
haven't got there yet.
No, sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Right, no dispensations. A reminder to everyone that the meeting is being recorded and we put the recording on the internet later on YouTube, gripping listening. So at this point I'll open the meeting for the public session, which gives the members of the public the opportunity to speak. We always start with the planning applications, so we'll go through those that are on the agenda in that order and give people the opportunity to speak. Does anybody want to speak about the application for what is down now as Tile House Farm Orchard, that is to say the square land next to Tile House, the old orchard, and the application to make a new gated access there? Does anyone want to speak on that topic? No? Okay, thank you. The next one,
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I missed something.
Yes.
Oh, I beg your pardon, Miriam, I didn't spot you.
Yes, I mean, the council is very aware of the history of the site. I think this application for a new gated access is way over the top for actually what they want to achieve. They have put in a gate without planning permission, but Ashford haven't taken enforcement action on that, although it was pointed out to them and they do accept it should have had the benefit of planning application. They were the silliest developers to actually dispose of the house without securing an access for themselves before they did it, but I don't actually have a lot of sympathy with them on that count. They have done nothing, as far as I'm aware, to maintain that site since the house was sold, which is some time now, although they could easily get in there with a mower and whatever you need to actually maintain the small area. So I think the council should be very guarded as to what actually this access is for, and I think the other application, which is not on the agenda as a planning application, but potential enforcement action on Polstra Court Road, should actually serve as a warning to the council as to what the real intent actually is here. So that's
Sure.
really what
Okay,
I
Miriam,
say.
thank you very much. Does anyone else want to add to that? Or any councillors want to raise anything or ask questions of Miriam? No? I think what Miriam said was very clear there.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
No,
Very helpful. Okay, the next one is Windrush Cottage in Stocks Road, the proposed two-storey side and rear extension. Do we have anyone who wants to talk about that one in particular, particularly the proposer or the neighbours? No? Okay, thank you. Of course, we get back to all of these when we start the council meeting proper, when councillors will decide what they think about them. The third one is a different story, I think. The redundant barn at Ewan Lamb Public House and the proposal for conversion of an existing barn, as it's called here, into a one-bed dwelling. Now, welcome to everyone who's turned up on that particular topic. And I'm given to understand by the clerk that two of you particularly want to speak on either the different angles or different views or whatever, but all, in both cases, people who live in that immediate area. I don't think the proposer is here or anyone on their behalf, correct? No. Okay. So who would like to start?
If I may.
Please do.
I'll stand.
Fine.
I've been asked to represent the community, if you like, of the Ewan Lamb Muse.
That's the Muse part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yes, and also the Ewan Lamb Public House.
Okay, good.
I've prepared a summary.
Yes.
It's quite lengthy. I know I've only got 4 minutes, but hopefully.
No, to be fair,
Okay.
what we did say in our policy was that because planning is something where the public have an immediate, more than an interest, they kind of are leading the way because they're either proposing or living next to it. We don't apply the 4 minutes to planning, we do anything else. So whilst I would encourage you not to talk for too long, you aren't actually on the clock for this one.
Okay. Well, basically, this is our objection to the redevelopment and change of use of what we consider is the garage store, not the barn,
Yes.
at Ewan Lamb Muse. The garage store forms part of the development known as Ewan Lamb Muse, but was built around about 2007, which provided 4 or 5 family homes. The detached garage store and the adjacent car parking area in front of the store were originally designed and submitted as being for the benefit of the use of Ewan Lamb Public Inn. I'd like to say the Muse is a delicately balanced residential cul-de-sac which provides off-road parking for about 8 to 10 vehicles. The access road to and from the residences is required to remain clear and unobstructed at all times as imposed under our terms and conditions of the registered titles of each premises, which benefit from the rights of way over the said access road. With the cooperation of the existing residents, the access and parking are managed with due consideration by each resident to ensure access is not obstructed, which enables the occasional service vehicles temporary access. We feel that any further or additional vehicles permitted as a result of the proposed change of use of the garage store would upset that balance and put a strain on the ability to access the Muse and to park additional vehicles without incident. Any obstruction of the access would be actually a breach of terms of the conditions of the registered title and would no doubt result in legal actions. The current registered owner of the user of the garage store, on the few occasions he visits the premises, he often blocks the access road with vehicles and trailers to unload items, subsequently blocking access and egress to and from the Muse, and such contentious incidents have occasionally been reported to the police authorities. Any redevelopment of the change of use of the garage store will impact on the immediate community and the existing 5 residential homes. Number 5 Ewan Lamb Muse and the Ewan Lamb Public Inn would lose their privacy as a result of the windows created under that development. The access road from the highway is currently recorded by the Land Registry as in the ownership of Hopton Acre Homes Limited, the former developing company. However, the company was dissolved some years ago and all property assets of the company transferred to Bonner Vacancy, which is the Crown property, who now have ownership and responsibility in the management of the access road. Therefore, based on the above, we object to the proposed change of use of the garage store to a 1-bedroom apartment, which would impact on our daily access and car parking in the Muse. In addition to that objections, I do have a few comments regarding Ashford Borough Council's planning details, which they put online. The application refers to the premises as redundant. This structure is relatively a new build, less than 12 years old. It's not redundant. It is in use by the registered owner. The building is in use as a garage store to store building materials and equipment by the alleged owner, Mr. Ashley Southgate, who is the director of Ash Southgate Properties Limited. Although the building is not listed, it falls partly within the curtilage of the Grade 2 listed building, the Wittersham Public House. It shares a boundary wall with the listed building, and in addition, the western flank of that building falls within the curtilage of the inn, all of which fall within the Wittersham Conservation Area. I also like to point out the consultees listed by Ashford Borough Council do not include the owner and access of the road leading to Wittersham Mews. The former ownership, as I said, was Hopton Acre Homes Limited, which was later dissolved. Its current ownership is one of vacancy. They haven't been consulted, and any new rights for work within the access road will require their consent, amongst others. I also believe that Ashford Borough Council should also include as consultee the alleged owner of the building, Mr. Ashley Southgate, as the application is by Mrs. E. Southgate, whom we have no knowledge of. In the planning application, as I say, there's a Mrs. E. Southgate, who we don't know. She may be the current owner. Whether there's been a transfer, I do not know. As I said, it's not a barn for agricultural use, but a garage and store, built with the intent, judging by the original planning drawings and planning inspector's remarks, as a replacement building to be used for the benefit of Wittersham Public Inn. As annotated on the planning drawings submitted to Ashford Borough Council in 2003 and as appealed in 2004, and consented to by the planning inspector. I believe a new pedestrian access is to be converted to, in respect to the store, to the side of the existing waste bin store, which will require creation of new rights of way. The removal of the existing bin store, which was intended as a communal bin store, is to be converted to the kitchen area and to provide the new pedestrian entrance into the building. Existing vehicle parking in front of the structure, I believe, well, I know, is in dispute. The 6 spaces alongside the Wittersham Public House was designated for the use of the inn, as annotated in the 2003 planning application drawings. The planning consent granted on appeal in 2004 was given by the planning inspector on the understanding both the car parking area and the garage store, i.e. the said barn, will be constructed for the use and benefit of the Wittersham Public Inn. The area to the rear of the building, in front of the existing garage door, of the said garage store, is limited and may be difficult in accommodating a parked vehicle. The garage itself being converted to living accommodation. To my knowledge, the building has no direct connection to main sewer, and therefore would require new rights and consents to connect into the existing mains, which are located beneath the access road leading into the Mews. Land not in the ownership of Mr. Southgate, the owner of the garage store. There are several mature trees within the said curtilage of the premises. These are considered an important contribution to the character of the Mews. This was landscaping area which was part of the original planning application. Existing surface water empties out onto the landscape area, so any future connection to main sewer would also require new rights over private property not in the ownership of Mr. Southgate. As mentioned, the existing use is not a barn, but is a garage. Until recently, it housed a Volkswagen camper van and continues to store building equipment, tools and materials assumed as belonging to Mr. Southgate of Ash Southgate Property Limited, former director of Hopton Acre Homes Limited, the developing company. Planning proposals. It's my view that the land identified in this application was part of the original land of the Wittersham Public House. The land was transferred to Hopton Acre Homes Limited by agreement. Such boundaries be agreed at a later date. 2 planning applications were submitted in 2003, and both of these were deemed as being crammed and were refused by Ashford Borough Council. However, as a result of an appeal in March 2004, the decision was overturned by the planning inspector, subject to 2 issues being resolved. The development plan provided for 5 residential homes, as said. In addition, a pub, car parking area for 6 vehicles and garage storage. On appeal, planning was consented by the planning inspectors on condition the intended future use of the pub, car parking area for 6 vehicles and garage storage was for the Ewe and Lamb public house, should at some time in the future the public house were to be recommissioned. Therefore, the proposed conversion of the garage store to a 1-bedroom dwelling is, in my view, a contravention of the planning inspector's recommendations and conditions. Hopton Acres Homes Limited, the owners and developers of the land, transferred the ownership of the designated pub, car parking area and garage storage to Mr. Ashley Southgate, the then director of Hopton Acres Homes Limited, for his own personal use and occupation. Mr. Southgate is currently recorded as the registered owner and uses the garage store. According to the Company's House, Hopton Acres Homes Limited was liquidated voluntarily and is no longer trading. All property assets being transferred to Bonavacantia, which is Crown property. Part of the garage store is constructed and encroaches on land within the current ownership of the registered title of Ewe and Lamb Public House, the western flank wall of the garage store. In addition, the western flank wall of the garage store was constructed with windows overlooking the Ewe and Lamb Public House garden, which I believe was not in the original planning application granted on appeal. To my knowledge, neither Ashford Borough Council or the planning inspector have approved these changes, and neither has the owner and occupier of the Ewe and Lamb Public House for these consented to these works. I assume these additional works and the proposed conversion is both in breach of the planning inspector's consent and conditions.
Okay, thank you very much for all of that. Thank you. Obviously it's hugely complicated and you've got a massive detail. I wonder if you would be willing to hand over what you read from to the clerk, because then she will know when she tries to figure out what's what. She'll be able to refer to it and make sure she hasn't got it wrong, and also get the spellings
I
correct.
apologise for my grammar and spellings.
Never mind,
You'll find out about mine in a minute.
she's used to notes, so that would be helpful. Before I forget, and we'll probably have questions from other councillors in a minute, can I just stress that all of you should be putting your comments on the Ashford portal online. I don't think there's a limit in length. I don't think it stops them.
No,
So
the
feel-
limit is physical size, I've discovered.
Is there?
Yeah, about 20 megabytes.
Oh yeah, that's quite a lot then.
Whereas
So-
if you put photos on, this is what...
Yeah, but no reason why you couldn't, if you go through and think about any
Yes.
errors,
Yeah.
apart from errors, don't worry about grammar, no reason why you don't put all that on. You know, we may as well give the planners something to sweat over.
Yes.
Because you know more about it than they do, and they won't go back through all the old. I mean, there's probably a file this big on
Yeah,
the
I
site.
can imagine.
So you know, feel free. Okay, at this point, do people want to ask questions on that before we move on to the Ewe and Lamb aspect?
The only question, I mean, firstly, thanks for pointing out the difference between the redundant barn and the current garage, which is very misleading anyway, isn't it? And I
And
wasn't
really, it
really-
looks as though it was built
I
as
mean,
a
looking
house
at
in
it, I
waiting.
couldn't see where redundant barn came
Yeah.
from. But anyway, my other thing was you mentioned about access to your properties.
Yes.
So if there's a car parked outside the garage store or the new building that they're going to have, the new dwelling, it obviously won't park in the Ewe and Lamb bit of car park, the 6 spaces. Where would it then have to? Where would a vehicle have to park? Somewhere where it obstruct your view or
Yes.
your
Yeah.
access.
That's
You
it.
were outside my house.
Right.
If you ever visited the cul-de-sac, it's
Yes,
very,
yeah.
very tight.
Yeah.
And even with the, if like the off-road part, to get off your drive, you have to be careful.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I've digged your car there, driving out of News, because it is a bit cramped.
Okay. Thank you.
Did you say there was somebody else who wanted to say something?
Yes,
as well?
there is another one coming.
I've got a question, but I'll wait until I've heard it.
Just to make sure I heard correctly, first of all, you mentioned that it's in curtilage of the Grade 2 listed building, Ewe and Lamb.
Yes.
So this, just remind me, this is not a listed building application, is it? That's
No.
going forward.
No.
Okay, thank you. And the second point was you mentioned Bonavacantia.
Yes.
Did you say the Crown property?
They are a government department. They regard themselves as Crown property. Yes.
But yeah,
It's-
sorry, I'm just trying to speak. The third question I had was the refuse lorry, right? When it arrives at Ewan Land, does it stay on the road and they all walk
It
up?
stays on the highway.
Right.
We take our waste.
You have to take it out, and
Yeah,
that's
so
probably a decision that it would be difficult to get to you.
Yes,
and
they
even
wouldn't
more
get down.
impossible.
They wouldn't be able to
Okay.
get down the drive.
And not wanting to alarm anyone, but actually if a emergency service vehicle was trying to get up there, a fire engine,
I think they might find it a bit difficult.
particularly if there was these vehicles parked.
You might be able to get an ambulance down the road, but I think
It would make it very difficult.
Tight for a fire.
Okay,
engine.
all right. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else want to at this point?
Not entirely.
Okay, so we'll hear from, now you're the resident in the Ewan Land.
Yeah, my name's
as-
Chris Harmon.
as
My
what?
wife Sandra. We've owned the Ewan land since over 20 odd years now.
So since it was a pub or before it was a pub as well?
No, we bought it as a public house.
Right.
It was virtually derelict when we bought it in 1994.
So it wasn't operating then?
It was just operating.
Right.
They had what they call a holding company that was in there running it. So we bought it. We did quite a lot of work on it. Yeah, basically we're part of the village. We want to be part of the village, but since probably to our own fault in some ways, by going forward with this planning application to produce additional dwellings, it has actually put us in limbo for a number of years really. I'm going to read from here because I'm not used to this sort of surroundings, but we would oppose the application. Everything that's gone forward has prevented us from creating what could be a viable public house. The title is incorrect. It is clearly stated as a garage and store. In fact, to give it its full title, is a replacement stroke repositioned garage and store. All the papers in Ashford and at the Secretary of State's office will show that. The go-ahead for the garage and store and the mews development was agreed at appeal in March 2004. We had put previous attempts in to get change of use into a dwelling, but they were refused. So
For your pub?
our pub. So the plans of the Secretary of State were to create a viable public house and to provide additional housing. The garage and store was pivotal in the approval of the development. It created 6 dedicated car spaces and parking to the north of the building so that we wouldn't actually interfere with the public house. So myself, Sandra, our son, will be able to park within the mews, within the garage and store, to free up the car park totally for patrons to the inn.
To the non-existent pub?
Yeah. We have not been able to implement any of these requirements because whoever is behind this has always refused us access. He's refused to hand over the building, refused everything basically, even though at the meetings with the Secretary of State they were told that they must hand this stuff over to us. Boundaries were intended to be redefined subject to the appeal going through. Unfortunately none of that happened, and again I'm off road here now because the guy actually created a separate land title in his own name for the 6 car spaces and the garage and store just prior to himself going into liquidation, and he sold it to himself for £5,000. And he's been very nice really, because he said we can have it back, but he wants £200,000. Obviously we can't afford it. The actual application form that is submitted, there are errors in there. Section 14, we say the correct title is the repositioned replacement garage and store. Basically all it is the original building we had, because we were landlocked, was basically turned round through 90 degrees, so you've got access to the land we had at the back. So, and lots of things went on there because they have tried to create a sufficiently wide entrance for things like ambulances, and but as I say, that these things like waste disposal have to go to the road. Section 10 in the application, it talks about their existing 2 car spaces. Those car spaces are actually within the garage and store. What it appears from what the applicant has put forward, just by the little bits of drawing that we have seen, he is implying that he's going to park his vehicles in spaces that are allocated solely for the use of the Wittersham Public House. They are not within his own building. They are actually taking up 2 of what would have been the 6 spaces for the Wittersham, which we think is totally unacceptable. I'm on the road again now. There were 2 sets of plans that were sent through. There's some in July and some a little bit later. If you look at the July plans, you will see that not only would he be taking our car spaces, but we would be totally cut off from any access to our building. We would have no access to get to essential services, coal, gas and oil. He would totally block us off, which I don't think he should be allowed to do, because we've had access since 1994, and he also had access unquestioned since the development went up in 2005. Yeah, if it did go ahead, we'd have no access whatsoever.
All right. If you sorry, go on.
I just wanted to summarise basically saying the whole idea of this was to make the Wittersham a viable business. We've been prevented from doing it. We've been in limbo for a number of years. The people behind this application have refused to hand over the garage and store, and on more than one occasion we have been threatened by solicitors to remove our vehicles. And in fact, if you look back, you'll see that they actually employed a parking company to put signs up round the mews, and we have been issued a number of parking fines over time, which fortunately we've got our solicitors to remove. We would like to see the Secretary of State's decision implemented. We can give the village back give it a village pub. We don't seem to have a village pub. I see the Swan is now closed. We'd just like to move on. We've had years of misery and we want to get away from it, really.
So, if I understand it, then at the time that the Wittersham Mews plans started to come forward, and of course I do understand in broad terms the fact that there was an application for 1 or 2, and then it got to be 3 or 4, whatever. That was done by someone who had taken part of the Wittersham land away from you,
Yeah.
sold it to get viability. They started going for houses. They got more than was originally proposed. At that point, and it was approved by the inspector, some of that land should have come to you to maintain the viability of your pub. But through some form of process, I won't call it anything different to that, some form of process, that bit of land got severed. The 6 spaces that you're supposed to be guaranteed under the planning permission have been severed into someone else's ownership. The garage and store have been severed into someone else's ownership. So the original planning application has never actually come forward as it should have done, the one that was consented in your reading. And of course, a new planning application now can change an earlier one, but it should at least be taken in the light of what has or hasn't happened before, as I read it. And we have our borough councillor here who's listened to all of that as well, which is handy. If you're willing, if you gave over your notes to the clerk, it would be helpful.
They're grim.
If they're illegible, then don't write.
I used to be able to write once upon a time, but yeah, you're welcome to.
Okay, good, thank you very much. So, Alan, you wanted to ask a question at this point.
It's just to clarify for myself, really. in 1994, you purchased the Ewan Lamb building itself from the developer?
No, we bought the Ewan Lamb from what was Courage Brewery.
Okay. And that obviously didn't include the store or whatever we call it now.
Well, it included, it was the whole site we bought was about half an acre in size. It incorporated the garage and store that was. In fact, it
Thank you, Miriam. No.
actually we would unlock them because it just went. The building went across the car park, so it was always a problem. So we bought half an acre of land with a garage and store, and what was then just about trading as public house.
And so then you disposed of the half acre of land yourselves, or?
Right, we applied for change of use, which we couldn't get on more than one occasion. So that's why we went to a developer to say, we can't get change of use, what can we do with this land? It was landlocked, we couldn't even get a mower through.
So you sold the half acre to the developer?
Yes, we
yourself?
did.
Yeah, I see, yeah.
On the proviso that should anything be granted, then we would get what is called a repositioned garage and store.
And on the proviso was that once the developer had got the planning, you would get the garage and store back?
Yeah, everything that goes through on the paperwork, it talks of it as our property.
Yes, okay.
But he
yes.
put, prior to liquidation, he recreated, I don't understand the right terms,
No.
but a title plan, which no one was aware of. I don't think Ashford were aware of. I don't think the Secretary of State was aware of. He created, prior to liquidation, a separate land.
It was obviously a
for that.
convoluted arrangement that was destined perhaps to go a little bit wrong, wasn't it? If you see what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, what was really bad about it all is that when you said over there that it suddenly started off as two houses, what really threw us was that paperwork dried up after the last refusal by Ashford Council, and it was only because we found out through the chartered surveyors that Mr Southgate had put in an additional property and had also put the garage and store back into the plans.
Okay, yeah. Yep.
And that was the whole reason, because no one would accept a building without the garage and store being rebuilt.
Okay.
No, I don't think I think
Can
I've
I ask a very quick question?
Oh, yes, Karen.
You mentioned, I think, that he'd sold it to himself for £5,000.
Yeah.
And then he'd said to you that you can have it all back for 200,000.
Yeah.
Did he ever put that in writing? Have you got a
Actually,
record of that?
yes. Actually, we've got
Okay, useful.
we've got a solicitor's letter
Okay.
from
Is
him
it
saying
200 now, or was it in the 90s?
that was going back a
2005.
few. That was going back. It was initially. If you've ever met this gentleman, he's always saying, "We'll be all right, Cliff. We're all right, Sandra. Everyone's going to be fine." And every time he came round for meetings, he would say, "Oh, I didn't realise that's what you wanted to talk about." So it was about a year on. I think he offered it to us initially for £150,000, and in the
about
last
2006, maybe.
and in the last 5 years, it went up to 200,000.
Okay, but you've got a record.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got it all on. Yeah, we've been.
Yeah.
Thanks to Keith here, we've been able to go through
All
paperwork
right.
and
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
it's all
Thanks
written
very
down.
much.
Thank you. Does anyone else have questions at this point before I open it to the other people in the...
Can I just add,
Go on.
the planning inspector's recommendations and conditions still stand. Just because Hopton Acre Homes Limited sold the land to
Sure.
Ash Southgate, those conditions still stand.
Sure.
So, my understanding that this planning application should be refused at the first step because it's contradicting what's already been approved by the planning inspector. And my understanding is it is only the planning inspector that could intervene and
Okay.
change the
I hear what
conditions.
you're saying. I'm not sure you're right, and Mick may know better. But I mean, planning applications. The whole principle of planning application is to vary what existed before into something new. So it may or may not, and I wouldn't want to go one way or the other.
I'm saying the conditions that were consented to
They're still
yet to be...
They're still extant at the moment,
Yeah.
and I think Ashford knows that.
Okay.
Okay, does anyone else want to comment on this particular application?
Make a quick comment in
Okay, we're in a public session, so
Yeah,
feel free.
Just to, you basically, most of you know who I am, I don't doubt. I know several of you do. I'm the Borough Councillor for Wittersham and others. I was around at the time that Mr Harman was speaking of in 2004 and 7, and what he said was basically true. I don't know how many of you were the original owners of the houses that moved in. You were? Oh, right.
I
Good.
bought it, but my solicitor.
Sorry?
I bought the first one.
You did? Oh, great.
Number one, but I realised what Mr Southgate was like, and I
Mm.
only let my solicitor deal with it.
Yeah.
So I own the whole of my little bit freehold, and I've got paperwork to show you.
Well done.
I bought mine from from Hopton Acre as it was, but
Yeah.
then they were in liquidation, so I bought it from liquidators, but I think I was the first person to, up until then, he had still owned it, and they'd only rented it out before.
No, I wasn't really interested on how you made your purchases or whether, just the time that you'd been there, like, you know, to see if you
I've
knew
only been
it
married
before
years.
it was built, as you might say, when you
I
were
was the
there.
first one in, I was there.
Yeah, great.
None of the others were still being built.
Right. Several comments have been made about Ashford Borough Council have got description wrong here and a description wrong there. They take the descriptions from the actual planning application. So they can only say that an application has been made for whatever it's called by the owner at the time. And even if they've got the area wrong, that has to be proved at a later date when they're inspecting the application, not at the time when it's put on the portal. And I do suggest you take the advice of the chairman here and all put your comments onto the portal, if you haven't already, including your tone there. I think that would fit on there quite well. And it looked like there's a lot of research being done, which would be a good point.
Can I ask, you say on the portal, I'm absolutely useless when it comes to computers. Can I actually put this just in writing?
You could put it in writing to them.
rather
Certainly you can, or send an email or whatever. There's various
I
ways.
didn't even understand the word portal, so
Call it the website then.
No, I'm sure you've got some friends there that will guide you on that.
oh yeah.
But do write a letter.
Fantastic.
Yeah, write a letter.
Yeah.
Address it to the planning department at Ashford and that'll do. Yeah,
Okay.
Right.
All right, thanks Mick. Does anyone else need to say anything else on this application before we move on to anything else in the public session? Does anyone else want to raise anything in the public session, or can I close it now? Phil?
Just very briefly, as you know, some of us have heard that the people in the dwelling behind the shop, the village shop, have objected again about the noise problem. After having lived with it for a year and 8 months, having lived with the noise, after the owners spent thousands of pounds on noise mitigation measures, which were accepted, they're complaining again. I'm quite concerned about this because I regard, and I know many other people do, this village store as a very valuable resource. He's only ticking over because his family are there to help him out. He's really struggling. I think this is antisocial behaviour, nothing less. I'd just like the Parish Council to have some thoughts on that.
Sorry, could I clarify? You're saying that the noise is coming from the
From the
shop?
refrigeration at the rear of the shop.
Right.
That was to me it was extremely disingenuous of Ashford Borough Council to allow planning, in the first instance, planning for a shop right next to a general store, right next to a very tight development where there was almost certainly going to be quite a noise problem with refrigeration. So the man nearly gave up, I think, but he spent thousands of pounds on the noise mitigation measures, and now because of this hot summer, I presume the refrigeration's been running on. They're even saying that there's a risk of vibration and damage to the structures. It's absolutely ridiculous. I was a refrigeration engineer for some years, and all these things are damped and very carefully designed. But why these people could, after 1 year and 8 months, having accepted the previous mitigation measures, could then complain again, I find awful.
Who have they complained to?
Well, only to the, as far as I know, the shop owner.
To Dax. And it's then come from Dax to me. Their complaint is that they can feel the vibration in their house from about 6 p.m. in the evening and through the night. I have, just very briefly, so you know, I suggested that Dax go back and ask for better information because it didn't make sense. It came back saying it causes vibration in the house. What is there that you don't understand? I have sent a long email back to the complainant since, having gone and, because Dax relies on me rather to guide him through this, not as really just as a friend of the business rather than as chairman of the Parish Council. I did go twice. I don't think that there's any exceptional noise. Yes, it did used to be noisy, by the way, until the mitigation measures. It's now all pretty quiet. You can barely hear the compressors in the shed, let alone outside. You do have fan noise coming out from the shed through the louvers, but only fan noise. There's no vibration in the floor with both compressors and fans running. And anyway, even if there was, it's beyond belief that it would then affect the house. 10 yards away, they're not on the same concrete raft or anything. So, you know, it's just, I don't understand it. And I said, until you can come up with better information, it doesn't make sense to us, I'm sorry. And feel free to come over and see for yourself. That's Dax will arrange. So that's where we are. He hasn't come back since then, that's about a week. But we don't know what will happen. I mean, ultimately, he's entitled to complain to the environmental health, and they can charge up a bit of overtime if they want to and come along and see what it's like. But I honestly don't think there's, I mean, it was noisy before, and we have, Dax got a sound engineer in that Ashford recommended at great expense, and he confirmed that under the British standard, it was too noisy. The trouble is that the British standard compares it to the noise when it's not happening. And at night in Wittersham, it is silent. He said you would have trouble finding anywhere in England any quieter than Wittersham at night. And you're only allowed a small number of decibels above that. And it was above. It was no worse than a car going by, but cars don't count under the British standard. So the trouble was, it was like having a car running past for 5 minutes when it was running, and that was unacceptable. That doesn't happen anymore. He did spend a lot of money. The compressors are now completely smothered with sound insulation inside the shed. There is fan noise because obviously you have to blow the hot air out, but that's all. And vibration, no. So thank you for your comment, but as far as I could see, unless there's something that is mysterious, and incidentally, anything that happened at night would happen in the day. More so because people open fridge doors in the day. Yes. So it's a mystery, and at the moment it's gone quiet. Thank you, Phil. Does anyone else, you were putting your hand up, Mary?
Yes, just a very brief update on the ongoing Parish Council's duty of regard to AONB purposes. I had a chat with Lucy Holloway, who was very helpful. She said that, yes, she did reply to our chairman's letter, but that, of course, this was beyond her remit, and that if we had letters from both the AONB unit and Natural England, then, of course, they take precedence.
Okay, well, I understand what you're saying. I did say last time that we regarded this as closed. If we do get anything that tells us that our advice was wrong from a formal level, then fine. But I don't think we want to discuss it anymore unless councillors want to go into that.
No. It's
No?
just
Okay, thank you for the update
You just
anyway.
need to be aware that if something does come through, we need to...
Okay, thank you. Obliged. Anything else that people want to raise?
Is there anything that can be done with regard to the speed of the traffic going through here? Because are definitely not going at 30 miles an hour.
Sure. There is an item on the agenda about speed information display SIDS, which we will get to when we get to it on the agenda. When you say there's anything can be done, in some ways the only thing that can be done is for the drivers to slow down. The police aren't very capable in their present situation of doing much about it, and we're not capable at all, other than putting up SIDS. But it is on the agenda. We are anxious about it, and we will get to it.
Can I just say something just in case you don't stay to the end? Our PCSO has given me a report, which I said I would say at the end, but she does say some speed checks have been carried out in the village last month, Friday the 17th of August, outside the sports field. A number of cars were stopped and given words of advice about their speed. We try and get out and do speed checks when we can and in all areas. So PCSO, she does know that it is a problem in the village, and they did say that they would try, and obviously they are. So we are going down that route as well.
No.
I think it's also true, and I understand her position because she needs to be out of sight really, but the sports field is not the fastest part of the village because it's going round the parked cars and the bend. But
even if she's
there's something
speak to people.
Absolutely. Oh sure. It is
There were 2 police units there.
Right, good.
About that. So fully equipped.
From our
I know,
experience
I
over
didn't have to
20
say
odd
that.
years, a lot of those people that are doing the speeding are actually people that live
Yep.
within
Of course.
Yeah.
Vast majority of local.
Understand. Okay, can I close the public session then? Fine, thank you very much. So we now go to the council meeting proper, and just to mention for those who don't normally make a habit, you're entitled to listen to the rest of the meeting or as much as you wish, but you can't speak during the meeting. You did, good. Excellent. Everyone's in line then. So can we go then on to confirming the minutes of the meeting on the 10th of July, and as people have mentioned, Alan for one, I'm afraid we do have 1 or 2 typos. So the first one came from an editing change, I think. We've got an extra on the comments in line 2 of 3827. It should be to some comments and then miss out on the comments. Where obviously something got put in and the other bit not taken out. The next one, which I'm sorry to say, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
I didn't spot in your first draft, 3830, the last line, you've got born with a unit, it shouldn't be there. And the other one I noticed, maybe not the same as Alan, we've got other matters in the public session number 2, first line, Miriam Lewis stated, just at the end we've got, she had asked for from the previous meeting, not from the previous meeting. Did anyone notice any other typos? Did I get that? So, did anyone have any substantive changes rather than typos to worry about? No? Can I sign them as correct record? Yep, thank you.
Right, there, please. And there, please. Thank you. There's nothing like that. Thank you. And there, please. Thank you.
Good, minutes are done. Thank you. Next item, matters arising. The vexed subject of the correspondence we've had with Tim Naylor and the reply from Lois something or other, Jarrett, and this is something that we were involved in before, if you remember. The reply that came from Lois Jarrett, in my reading, rather got the wrong end of the stick. There was a slight touch on the fact that what we'd asked for was too difficult because they don't have the resources, but it was also rare. The fact is she does acknowledge that they used to do it 10 years ago, so they think it was the right thing to do, they just don't do it anymore. And the fact that she went on into the idea that, oh, well, they give the officers reasons now when they give the decision on the portal, misses the point completely, because our complaint is not whether they've got reasons that we find out afterwards, it's the fact that afterwards is too late, and that they should understand our views before they go against an objection, simply because once granted they can't take it back. There's only a one-way appeal. Very unusual. I mean, legal appeals can go both ways, but not planning appeals. So she did her best, but the fact is that they're trying to avoid doing what they used to think was the right thing. I have drafted, and I sent out to you, but you may not have had the chance to look at it, a draft reply. I don't mind you spending a bit longer looking at it and letting Yvonne know if you think that's all right. But I think we ought to go back with something, even though it may be that they will be quite determined not to do it.
Is it reasonable to ask Michael what he thinks in this situation?
Well, Mick has gone and shaken up around the
yes,
desks
and
in the past.
I was several times. Obviously I see it from both sides. I mean, it does take a bit more effort to do that, and that is something that they're considerably lacking there at the moment. And I don't know whether she mentioned that in the email to you.
She did say
I did have a copy of that, but I don't know whether it's come out here. I'm happy to, when I've read your letter, if I can, I'll support your letter going in, like your email going in.
I think the resource question, Mick, is that they say that it only happens
Yes, I thought that was a good
rarely.
point.
If it only happens rarely, it has very limited impact on resources. I mean, if it's only one phone call once a month, it's not the end of the world. It's not as though it's 3 a day.
No, exactly. That's a good point.
I think we've had it twice over a number of years,
Yeah.
so
Indeed.
it's not a good year.
Is that over the last 10 years? So?
We don't actually object to very much.
No.
And when we do, sometimes it's on the basis that we don't like it, but we can understand them consenting it. It is only, they'd have to ring. It's only occasionally, a couple or 3 times in my time, that it has been a matter of considerable irritation to the parish council and to the neighbours. And not always on a big case either. One of them was the little garden hut that was put on a mound right against the fence. And that caused considerable annoyance because we thought it was just completely outrageous that it was granted.
So the ones you're really looking at are the ones that you would like to see refused, that are permitted.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, that's
And
Not the other way round.
Not even that. Oh yeah, exactly. If we wanted it consented and you refuse, that's not a problem at all because the applicant can appeal.
Yes,
The problem is when they can't appeal, and we're not even saying, although if we suggest that we object and the Count and Ashford wants to grant, that would, in our position and Ashford's position 10 years ago, that would lead to a phone call. But in some of those cases, we will simply understand, I think, as councillors, well, we think it should be, either not granted or not granted in the terms it's been applied for, which is all you can deal with. But we would understand that the officer may have a different view, so long as he understands our view and that the clerk has the opportunity to put it through. But some of them, we really do think that it's a matter of conveying to the officer not only the strength of feeling, but the reason or almost the nuance of the feeling, and you can't get that through on filling it out on the portal. It gives the opportunity for the clerk to say, my councillors objected to it and the reasons were this and this, and the point is, did you see so and so? Did you, when you came to look at it, did you notice such and such? Or whatever. And then if they grant it, well, okay, we've done our best. You've always got the right to grant, but the fact that it's then, I mean, the neighbours, in the cases that we've been upset by, they have to live with that. And when it's actually put down here as being, as I put it, I'm sorry, I'm just looking.
There's her response there if you want.
This is what it's looking at. I was just about to try and get it on mine, but thank you.
Apologies for the cracked screen.
The point I'm trying to find, and I can't now, is the fact that even if it's only a few, each one of those is painful to the people involved.
Yes.
It's big to them, even if it's only occasional. You know, you can't play numbers in that respect. Each one of them is a different householder. So, okay, if people are happy, let's move on. If anyone wants to put in suggestions to
So
move
has
on in the
everybody
next
seen
few
it?
days.
No, people have seen it.
Yeah, it's fine.
Everybody's seen it.
It's fine.
So you're
Yeah.
all happy
All right.
with it?
Yes.
Feel free to, if you feel that any words need changing to meet your voice rather than mine. And I have been quite sharp, particularly on social government. But
I just hope she doesn't spend too much time looking up what that means.
what social government? I thought everyone of a certain age understood
I'm
that.
just
Perhaps she's
working on
young
the
to
fact that
remember.
they've got minimal resources, but
Oh, of course, yes. Yes. But it is an irony, isn't it? Because this thing about taking all the stuff off the portal, I mean, what the criticism of the social government from 97 to 2007 was that big decisions were taken in government without any records. What's happening now is that actually giving planning consents, and then all the comments are being wiped because the Information Commissioner feels that you shouldn't
well,
leave
they
them on
can't
there.
actually wipe them.
No.
That's what
You
they
can't
and I
see
hope
them.
they're not. Well, you could actually hit them with thousands of subject access requests, which would seriously tie up their resources.
Oh dear.
But
They
that's,
can't just leave them in the public domain.
They are on there for a period.
Yeah.
though, before
they need to be on there for a
Yeah.
period. And I think that if they make it clear that whoever's commenting on that is actually accepting the fact that they go into the public domain,
Yeah.
Oh, they
I
do.
don't see why they've got a problem.
No, absolutely.
They shouldn't keep them on there forever, but they need to store them
I
somewhere.
don't know what. Well, bearing in mind that one of the things you can find on there is planning history.
Yeah.
I don't understand why you have planning history but not objection history. But by the by, let's move on then. Thank you. So now we come to the planning applications. The first one is Tile House Farm Orchard on which.
Are we doing matters arising still? We've moved on.
Well, there was only one on the agenda.
Am I able to bring up a matter arising at this point?
If there was one, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it pertains to the land on the south side of Palstrey Court Road, because that's not on today's agenda. That's on last month's agenda.
Right.
And I just wanted to highlight a couple of issues with
Okay.
regard
We
to
have actually got it down as.
Is it on our agenda
Well,
today?
it's under the
Information.
working party reports.
Yeah.
It's
I-
on there, so we can talk about it now on the
We've
agenda.
got it down as
Yeah.
to note.
The old stables, Palstrey Court land.
180186.
But we've
Yeah.
got, because stuff has come in, we will be talking about it then.
It's down near the end of the agenda.
To note.
It's the the old stables,
Very last
Palstrey
one about
Court.
highways.
No, it's not the old stables.
No.
that one.
No, it's to note.
There we are. It is on
And
there.
on
Yes,
the
it's a
south
note.
side
Yeah.
and edge
Yeah,
side.
So I can bring it up then.
You've
Sorry.
got it. Exactly
Yes,
right.
we've got more on it. I've got
Exactly.
information on it.
Okay.
That's good.
So, thanks, Alan. So, Tile House Farm Orchard, as spoken on by Miriam, helpfully. Who wants to start us off on that one? Tile House Orchard. Paul?
Well, my view is that notwithstanding the history of it, and they should have done this or they should have done that in the past, the fact is that looking at, as I saw it, purely as a planning application, I went and had a look over the hedge. You could, it's only a little gateway anyhow. Well, yeah, I did, you know, but it's worth having a look at it, otherwise people can say stuff is behind there and it's not. So I went and had a look. It's totally overgrown and you basically need vehicular access, as they say, in there. And I see no reason, notwithstanding all the history and what have you, I see no reason, I couldn't find anything to object on planning grounds to put a gate in there to get in to properly tend the land. And just to say, well, they should go in with a hand mower or a mower through a little gateway is just impractical. No, you know, and whether we like them or not is irrelevant. They have a right to tend their land and put it right. So personally, I see no reason to object to it.
Next one.
Well, likewise, I couldn't see any particular reason why that should be denied.
I was exactly the same as Paul. The entrance mirrors Tile House itself as they want it, and there is nothing on planning grounds to object to that application.
I'm the same.
George?
My only concern was when we were looking at the houses, potential of having houses on there, one of the issues we had was the vehicle access and the sight lines for things coming in and out of there, which is one of our major things. And I think that's going to be, in some ways, could be more of a problem if you've got vehicles with trailers going in and out. They're even longer than the car, and I think that would be my issue. Obviously, we can't comment on what might happen after that and think, oh, perhaps they're doing it because they want to do that. And I think it's a bit of a catch-22. You know, if we don't give them the access, then it will definitely go to rack and ruin. If we do give them the access, they could go in and rip everything out. But my issue would be the access to that site. And I think, as we've said before, when we're looking at the houses, that would be a site that needs maintaining for the reasons we've mentioned before about being, you know, within the area of outstanding natural beauty, being an old orchard, being part of the rural, you know, area as well. So.
Did you read have you been on to see what other comments were? Because Highways weren't happy with the access as it was. They wanted it put further back and made bigger. And they wouldn't consider it until more plans came in.
Well, I haven't seen that, but I know about that.
Okay.
So, but I'm not aware of any further plans coming in. So as far as Highways are concerned, it's a non-starter.
My feeling is that, firstly, and I understand the way planning works, but when we first started considering the applications for houses, the original one for 3 that we objected to, then the one for 3 that we accepted, then the one for 2, and on and on and on, I won't repeat it all. One of the points that was made at the time was, in the public sessions, that used to be a lovely orchard and it shouldn't have houses on it, and I used to say, it will not be a lovely orchard again, it is now going to be an overgrown heap. And of course it is. And whether they have an access or whether they don't, and whether they, having got an access, ever take anything in there to do anything, it will still be the same. It is not now a nice orchard as a garden to, you know, the curtilage of the other building. My anxiety is that, albeit I take the point about, you know, are there planning reasons to refuse someone access to their own land, what I dislike is that, and maybe not be a good planning reason, this is a prelude to getting an application through for a house having established an entrance. And I don't like that kind of subterfuge ever. If they want to have an entrance, they should get the planning permission for the house, at which point no one will care about the overgrown or the apple trees. They will all basically go, or most of them will. They get the planning permission for the house, that gives them the access. Until then, getting an access on what seems to me to be a complete cod reason, whatever the planning rules are, and it may be that the planning officer will just have to grit their teeth and grant, I don't know, but I don't find that I can support it because I think it's taking the mick. So, where are we on that? Can we have a vote on that? I think it's probably going to go through on the basis of what you've said. Who's in favour? That's 4. Who's against? 2. Who's amazed, George? Okay. So we are supporting it on a 4-2. Okay. Who's going to tell me? Right. Okay. So we've done that one. I did think, by the way, sorry, I'm going back on myself, I did print this off and read through it, this whole load of environmental, this, that and the other. They'd obviously spent... oh, sorry, wrong one. Forget that. Yeah, no, forget that. Forget that. Okay, next one is Windrush Cottage, Stocks Road, and I don't think we've got anyone here, they said before, that was here to speak to it or against it. Who would like to start us off on that? A double-storey, 2-storey extension, side and rear.
I looked through it, it seemed fine, and my only question was, if there's nobody here objecting it, how do the neighbours feel about it? I couldn't see, when I looked at it, any objections, and I've had a look at the property, which is set back anyhow, so it doesn't, because it's an open area.
I've heard from one who said he's quite happy.
Oh, okay.
On the side it's been built, or the opposite side?
On the side it's been built.
Oh, okay. Well,
Oh, there you go.
I mean, that was the issue. It's actually, because of where it is, it's kind of round the back of the other neighbour. Okay, well, I felt it was only a neighbour's issue, so are we all happy with it? We'll support that one. And then the difficult one, the redundant barn, Ewan Lamb Public House. conversion of existing barn, as it's called here, into a one-bed dwelling. Let me make some points first on what we've heard before we go round. It does seem to me to be administratively and legally a thoroughgoing mess on many levels. And when you've got that sort of a mess, you don't ever come out with very good solutions because you're cross-cutting so many things. It is important, although he's not here or represented here, we have to be fair to the person who wants to do it, as well as fair to all the existing neighbours. But it is a mess. It's a mess legally, from what we gather. I mean, we're relying on what we understand and what we're told and what our borough councillor can tell us. It's a mess legally, and it's a mess on planning as well, because it was interesting what we were told about the fact that we all knew about the 6 spaces, and my understanding, which was confirmed by Cliff, was that those spaces probably included the 2 that now want to be taken as spaces for the garage. My thoughts in terms of our local residents who are very concerned about this, just as an individual really, is that I think they probably need to be off getting advice, and it's going to cost money, but I think you've got to try and get solicitors involved on the land position, because there may have been things that are not as they should be, and you have a very important asset to protect, all of your homes, but you need to do that together. The council, Ashford, I think will not take any account of land ownership or very little, or covenants or anything like that. The one thing that I think you can bang on about is the inspector's decision on the 6 spaces. And if the applicant can't demonstrate, and I don't think he went out of his way to demonstrate, how those 6 spaces can endure, because it looks to me along the side of the ewe and lamb that there are only 3 or 4, so there've got to be 3 or 4 somewhere else, and I don't know where they are. You know your site, you know your deeds. But I think that is one that, to protect yourselves, needs to be thought about. Now that is separate to the planning. You may think, well, let's wait until the planning happens. If it doesn't happen, no problem. If it does happen, you know, get on and do that, because you can still stop him, but you'd be in court to do it. Perhaps better to be able to demonstrate that is it necessary for a planning application that it's deliverable, like your big plan has to be deliverable?
Well, I think within reason, you can't sort of put in a planning application to build something on top of something else.
Right.
You know, ownership of the land is nothing.
No.
Not involved. Descriptions of the application, which I feel are fairly obscure here. I mean, like in calling it, but this is my personal feeling. I have to say that. I think is something that we can also go about. I have to admit, I'm not stuck on that idea there at all. And also, obviously, if somebody builds a block and access, that could be taken into account. You know, I mean, it'd be like saying building across a footpath.
Okay, well, as I said, my feeling is that you perhaps need advice. That's a personal feeling, it's not a council recommendation, it's not even my recommendation, but if I was in your position, that's the way my mind would be working. I think that, let's be honest, you are up against someone who has had a lot of advice, and this document didn't come from out, the big thing, and it glosses over a lot. Anyway, let's go around the table. What do other people think? George?
I feel I can't support it because there are too many inconsistencies in the application itself. There's not enough information, and where there is information, we can't be sure that information is correct.
Sure. Alan?
Do we know if the Harmons who live in the Ewan Lamb house or pub or whatever it's called now would really want to re-engage as a public house given optimum situations? No. Do we know, or I mean, he said they did. But I mean, I can't.
A lot of
feeling-
time has moved
That's
on.
difficult to judge.
I mean, I was knocking around in the time in 1994 when there was a lot of village. I wasn't on the parish council, but there was a lot of village feeling about the pub closing down, which was seemed to be at that time not quite straightforward. And then of course,
The irony here, Alan, is that to the extent that the pub closed down, failed really for all intents and purposes. It failed when the Swan was open. The Swan isn't open at the minute, and we don't know what the future there is. The Ewe and Lamb, however, has been badly damaged in terms of its potential for a pub by the loss of its car park to building 5 people's houses.
I mean, could it theoretically reopen as a pub? Would it get permission to do so, or has it got permission to do so?
I don't know, is there a change of use from a pub?
No, it's still,
There's potential.
It's still a pub, so they could tomorrow just start
Well,
selling
no,
beer over the counter again.
It's no, but you can't park your car.
Do you need to declare this as
Overseas.
other than pecuniary interest?
Well, it's just an interesting thought, because I was thinking with other village institutions at risk, the Ewe and Lamb could theoretically have a future.
Absolutely. It's not beyond the realms of possibility, except that there aren't enough spaces.
Well, you wouldn't be able to. You would have to walk to it, which
I was
is
going to
probably
say,
a
if
good
it was
idea.
a true village pub,
Yes.
you should be able to walk to it.
Yes, and you
shouldn't be
shouldn't
driving
really want to drive
anyway.
your car
You
to
can
it
tie
anyway.
your horse up out.
Well, that's true.
No, because they're not the
No
stables
space.
down.
I was going to say, I used to have stables.
Yeah.
I didn't bring that up.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Okay, Sue.
But I'm not supporting it.
You're not supporting it. Sue?
No, I'm not supporting it, and there's definitely not enough car park spaces for that conversion without anything else.
Leslie?
No, I'm not supporting it for the same reason as across the table. But also,
Oh, sorry.
bit of a non sequitur maybe, but it's a very small building, and what purpose will it serve?
Airbnb or something.
Exactly.
It does have that look to it, a one-bedroom dwelling just about squeezed in. Yes.
There are others in the village, one bedroom. That do that.
No, that's why I wondered.
Paul?
And that could cause a parking problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, much the same as everyone else has said, I think that I picked up that the boundaries still haven't been properly agreed. Secondly, and I'm not a land lawyer in this sense, but if you're connecting to main drainage and you have to go across someone else's land and they say no, you can't compulsory purchase
You're
drainage,
stuffed.
can you? No. So and the thing that resonated with me, partly from past experience years ago, is the implications of when you buy a property that's in curtilage to a Grade 2 listed building. Effectively, the conditions of the Grade 2 listed building apply to whatever properties are in curtilage. So the fact that all the stuff that's there, it's a flawed application. Trying to sort of not forget the history behind it all, because that is important, but purely looking at it from a planning point of view, it's flawed. It's got so much in there, and there's absolutely no way that I feel that I could support that. So it's a no from me as well.
No, and I'm also not supporting it. I think that in terms of the use of the building, ignoring what we were told about the fact that it really is supposed to be for the ex-pub, whatever, the pub in abeyance, the building has been built almost for conversion to a house. It's got that look about it. It was built rather well for a garage and store. And taken in that sense, could it be a little one-bedroom house? Sure. Can it be a one-bedroom house in its particular location with no space around it and parking and this, that and the other? No, it can't. And on that basis, I also object. So,
Can I just add, Mr. Chairman, in the light of your impending correspondence to Ms. Jarrett, this is probably the Clerk's correspondence. This is a classic example of where it would be unbelievable if a decision was made to support this without coming back. There is so much here. They wanted one test case to apply their limited resources.
Reasons we'll put some of them down.
But this is a classic case where there's so much there. It wants a bit more than no, we don't, or yes, we do.
I can't believe that they'll put that one through.
yes. The other thing that is interesting here, as you possibly saw, was that they did have pre-application advice from Mr. Bax, who did say that he saw no problems in principle with doing it. I can only assume that he didn't really have full possession of the facts.
And he's now left Ashford Borough Council's employment.
He has gone. Doesn't stop.
This is a different Mr. Baxton. Baxter who runs the shop.
No, that's
That's
Dax.
Dax.
Oh, right, I was getting confused
Oh,
there.
is
sorry.
Yes.
No, this is
Don't
this
mix
is
your Dax and your
Dax.
backs.
So he's branched out
A
into
Dutchman rather than an
Okay.
Indian. Okay, right, we've done all that then. Thank you very much. Let's move on.
Are you going to get some words from the
Oh Lord.
because we've got an extension for this.
I suggest you put in that we strongly object and the reasons will follow.
Feel free.
Okay.
And then I've still got to think about what on earth to say. You're going to get these other things from the other people. Okay. Right, next one is to note 1279 Wittersham Cemetery, change of use of land from orchard to cemetery, extension for use of the burial ground. Good night, nice to see you. Thanks for coming. The first thing is that you've all seen that the application has been put in, and I would commend our clerk for the amount of detail that was put in there. It was an exemplary application compared to some of the building ones we get, and with all the photographs and the installations and goodness knows what. It was really good.
I think it's a new revenue service we should be offering.
Oh,
Yes, I think so.
Charge her out, 150 quid an hour.
And double if we support it.
Chairman's honorarium suddenly goes up.
So that's been put in. It doesn't. The timing doesn't matter because it's a change of use, as we said last time to Miriam. The other thing is that the work is underway. Dave Ward has already been through at least twice with his thing which cuts the ground up, subsoiler, and drags roots out. So it's all in big sort of tufts and humps at the minute. When he's ready, he will go through and start doing ploughing and then harrowing. And do you want to mention that quote at this point?
Can do.
Yeah.
When we were down there, obviously we've taken out those few trees, but a lot of it has grown this way onto the ground. We need to take it back to the trees that are there. So we asked, well, he said that he could do it. We said we need to get it done, and he said he could quote, he's got all the equipment. So I've now had a quote from him for that, and he's going to take it up. What is the wording? Probably down here. I'll put it under. Yes. To carry out the cutting back of the hedgerow trees to tree line and to a height of 15 foot, and the disposal of cuttings along the length, £900.
So in other words, it'll be, as he says, taking it back to the line of the tree trunks. It's sort of undergrowth hedge and God knows what has come out. Take it back to the tree trunks, and then at 15 feet, of course, the branches are coming out over the top. We don't touch them if they're 15 foot up, but it sort of does this. Whereas at the minute, the hedge is taking up 10 foot of cemetery, or 8 or 6 or whatever.
Is that something we'll be able to maintain afterwards then?
Yes.
Once it's done.
Well, what we can't do, maybe, but what we can't do is do this heavy work.
No, I was
afterwards.
saying afterwards.
Yeah.
Yes,
then
we
in a,
maintain it.
Okay.
Yes, because that is where we're going to put the track.
Yeah.
Be next to it.
Oh,
So
right,
with taking all that away, he can then plough up to a decent. He won't obviously be going to go right to the trees. We won't need him to, but he'll still be able to get to the edge that we want him to, whereas he can't at the moment.
Okay.
And just one thing, I don't know whether anyone's looked on the website for comments and stuff for our application. But one came in today from the Ramblers, because we've got public rights of way. They can see no objection to the application, as it has no apparent adverse effect on 3 public rights of way.
Isn't just started work, is it?
No, because it's not preparing,
No,
just
no.
nothing to do with the...
It's mainly left at the moment.
Nothing to do with the application.
No.
No.
The application's for change of use.
Yes.
We haven't yet changed the use.
No, right.
And as long as it hasn't been changed, it's agricultural, so we're entitled to be ploughing, planting, hedging.
We're going to
fencing.
be hard pushed to get a crop in though.
Because we don't need it as a burial
I think we
ground
should plant some vines.
Oh, no.
a while yet.
No.
Well, everyone else
So
seems
it's
to.
No, I didn't know how long before
See
you...
Chapel Down,
Well,
400
yeah.
acres near Maidstone.
Well, we don't know how long we'll need to.
I was talking to someone at
Yeah,
Literature.
but, yeah.
Similar
We're way
local
off.
farmer there doing
Um,
pretty much the same
and-
thing. It's
So we
And
ticked that we haven't started it because we haven't started
Mm.
using it as a burial ground.
And the Environment Agency, we have no comments as the development is not in an SPZ or vulnerable groundwater area.
It's fine.
Right.
All right.
good.
The other thing that that Yvonne didn't mention, she's moved on from Pauline, she used to be Pauline.
I'll go back.
I think, Jeremy, you're dead. You're dead.
Yeah. Brain death, you know. The other thing that Yvonne didn't mention is that for some reason the consultation by Ashford was sent out to about 40 people or 50
Oh, loads,
people.
half the street and half Swan Street.
Yeah. Goes right down to the school. They must have spent as much on their post.
I think there were one or two people who were left out who felt really quite miffed.
I don't know, I was not quite as far as you,
Oh, right,
but
okay.
That always qualifies for advertising for the new facility.
Was there a voucher on the bottom?
Yeah.
When you draw up the map,
10%
And the date you're going to use it.
When it's gone, it's gone.
it depends how big a circle you need to draw around the application site. Well, maybe a proposed cemetery needs to have a bigger circle than a private dwelling. I don't know.
well, originally when I put it in, and you know, I clearly the street. Then when it came back, the address was 37 Swan Street.
What was it?
So when I went and said, no, not 37 Swan Street, it came back with, well, that was the nearest
Oh,
their
yeah.
thing.
Nearest
brought up.
dwelling to it.
Yes.
something like
So I said, but so she said, all right, she will get it corrected. She then came back and it said Swan Street. Took out the 37, but it was still in Swan Street. So I went back, no, it's the street. So
That's where
then
we are
came
now.
third time.
Well, it's midway between the two, isn't it?
No wonder they're short on resources.
So, okay, that's where we are on the cemetery, and we can't actually approve the 900 today, can we, because it's not on the agenda, or does that fit within the rules
Yes,
we gave ourselves?
yes.
Okay, well, we did give ourselves rules to get on with that project a while ago, so if no one's unhappy, then we just leave Yvonne to carry on.
No, it needs to be done.
Okay, yes, he wants to do it soon as well.
Yeah.
There's no point in bringing heavy machinery in when he's already got the ground smooth.
No.
Okay. The next one then is the housing needs survey. Now Paul gave us a letter earlier.
So if Leslie, Colin, myself and Yvonne met with Tessa O'Sullivan, the Rural Housing Enabler, a few weeks back, and went through really a number of things. One was the process. Secondly was to look at how we would adjust the template letter so it actually makes relevance to Wittersham and what we'd also want to put in there. So I will send out an electronic copy to you all, so if you want to make any suggestions, but I thought it was useful to have a hard copy. The essential pieces, I think, the changes that we thought would be useful to have in here was just a reminder when the last one was done. Secondly, was also to say that not only were we interested in getting a sense of who needs affordable housing, but also recognising, as we did before, there are older people who might want to downsize but stay in the village, and then also add the other bit was part of our legacy for generations to come. We also want to try and identify the future needs of young people in the parish who may want to remain in Wittersham and have their own home in the future, which is different to last time, but we did agree on that. I also put in that one of the possibilities in the future, and there are obviously a number of different stages to go through, that's changed since January 2012 is the existence and the development of community land trusts, which Colin and I and also Angela from the Voices group were told a little bit about at the summit conference that they held on that. And then I put in a bit about all completed surveys will be entered into a Wittersham Village Store's Christmas hamper drawer. I did check whether or not we need a licence for that. We don't, because we're not selling any tickets beforehand. And then I just thought, to be completely fair, we'd get the rural housing enabler to draw these at random, what have you, rather than us. So I'll get that out tomorrow. Interesting enough, today, you might not have seen this because you're included on this, but it only came out this afternoon. But there is what looks a very interesting afternoon in the Kings Hill Community Centre in West Malling on the 22nd of October, where Wickham Community Land Trust, Wickham's a village in Hampshire who've had great success. I think it was on 8 properties as a community land trust. And I've just had a very quick look. They've also produced the most fantastic case study. It's about 50 pages long. However, the right-hand column tracks through in a timeline all the issues and the hiccups they had and how they resolved it. Someone put it together as a very useful piece. And Rural Kent are putting this on. They've managed to persuade the chair of Wickham Community Land Trust to come along. And I'll send you that as well. There's no charge. It's at the West Malling.
It's this one, yeah?
And
And you'll send it to us?
yeah, I'll forward it to everyone. But that looked quite useful. So what I would suggest is that if we can agree this letter, then I'll just get it off to Tessa O'Sullivan. I've put November 2018 at the top as a sort of what we thought from our meeting was probably, I mean, it makes little sense to have the letter going out for Christmas draw in January. So hopefully November will be there. The Outlook on Oxney magazine that we generously support financially have also generously counter-offered to us that they would agree to deliver inside the copy of each of the next Outlook at no charge, which is great. And
we just have to cope them with the ones that don't get out.
Yeah.
The next one, do you mean the October one or November one?
I don't know when the next one would be. I think we'd have to probably liaise with. I don't know when the dates are.
Well, the October one closing date is this weekend, so
it'll be the one after that.
But you're talking about putting it in there, not
as an insert.
Yes, an insert, not printing it.
That's not the deadline.
You're talking about maybe going out with the November.
Yes, as a loose insert.
And we need the blurb in it as well.
Yes, well, we could do that as well. We could adapt the letter.
So I would need it by about 24th of October, round about then.
Right.
If it goes out in November.
Right, 6 weeks now.
So it just gives you time to get it back in for the Christmas draw.
Yep.
Quite.
Okay.
All fresh produce. So, and I'll get this link out as well.
So if people go back to Yvonne or Paul with any changes.
And Yvonne, may I just say, we were talking about earlier today about how useful you found Facebook in getting messages across.
Yes, Facebook,
to
I found
particularly younger
that,
people.
I don't know how many of you use Facebook, but I get to see the likes and the shares that people do. And the housing, for instance, I put in the thing about housing needs, let me know, and that got shared a lot. And I did get the response that I got on finding out who was wanted to be on, because I was going to do that, find out who was on the list or who wanted houses. That was mostly through Facebook.
And
but can we promote
as well?
I didn't put it on Nextdoor.
But we could. You can restrict it to Wittersham.
Yes. Yeah, although we go to Stone as well.
It's like we were saying earlier, that it might be a slightly different demographic.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is.
Which may be covered more by Outlook. I just think that trying to promote this somehow through Facebook, we might target the people that we are trying to get.
Well, that's why I do, and you get their feedback.
So I don't know how you
do that. So I sound completely ignorant here. I can't. Do we have a Facebook page?
Yeah.
Yeah, and does every parish councillor know about it and is part of it, or do they? I'm not.
months ago we
I know.
agreed, and
Well,
I can't remember.
We do have one. It doesn't
We
matter.
do have one. Yeah.
I'm on the Sports Club Facebook page.
well,
No, we do have
have
one.
you got a Facebook page?
Yes.
Well, you
Personally.
can pick up
Yeah.
Wittersham
Just go
Parish
into your-
Council and be one of my followers, and you'll get.
Right.
I've got 77 followers.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm
you'll
going to
have
join
78,
Facebook.
79. Do I hear any of us on 79? Do I hear 80 in the room?
I'm going to actually
But
subscribe to Facebook
it's-
purely so that I can
Yeah,
follow.
and that's where I put my
Right.
and the things that do get
Yeah.
passed round are the road closures. That's
Road
another one.
Yes, very useful.
Very
And
useful.
the
Very
biggest
useful.
one that I did put on next door as well was the scan for the Costa vouchers.
Yes.
That got 28 shares.
Could I
Yet,
just ask then, going back to this, whether
George, can I just finish things?
Sorry.
I won't bring it
Yeah,
up later
okay.
because I was going to bring it up
Okay.
later. The things that I put on, the consultations, I put consultations on that. None of those get liked or shared.
right, yeah.
I was going to bring that in, so.
Okay, sorry.
George.
No, just that if we get putting it on Facebook, will there be an opportunity for people to do a direct email to the Royal Housing Enabler from Facebook to get a questionnaire sent if they haven't already got one, or something like that? So otherwise, if they then
Find
want to
a way
come
of
off
getting
Facebook and
some-
ring somebody,
Yeah.
might as well try and do it all in one hit.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So to answer your other question, whoever answered it, can I suggest, and this is not, if you're happy with this, Yvonne, I'm quite happy to kind of gather all your thoughts in and then pass them consolidated to Yvonne, rather than...
Yeah,
that-
but one person would be better.
Yeah, so if you can give me any... I will send you all out a digital copy of the letter
Yeah.
and also the CLT
Yeah.
piece, and then if you've got any suggestions on the letter, and I think your point there about questionnaires and Facebook is a good one, I will try and... I'll amend that.
Okay.
And then once we've done that, then I'll pass it back to Yvonne and just make sure. And then we need to make sure that... I think really it's probably up to Yvonne to contact Rural Kent to order it, to put the order in.
Okay.
If that's okay. Should really come from the clerk, I think.
Okay. Right, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Can I just to update, a couple of the things that I was asked to find out from this meeting that we had was how many people were on the list.
Yeah.
And we looked at different sites that we wondered where these houses could be put. And obviously we had gone through this before, so we looked at those same sites we looked at before. So I found out those things. We have 3 families at the moment that are living in the village that are in housing need and meet the criteria. All these 3 contacted me. I got in touch with Ashford, and one of them wasn't on her list, which said make sure they do, and that's now gone through. So we've got 3, and they're just obviously Wittersham comes first, and this is what I'm saying now. It goes out to Stone, Appledore, Rolvedon, and Newenden. They're what they call the Cascade villages, and there are 3 families with connections to those Cascade families, the villages rather, that are looking. So those 4 houses should go straight away. And then the other thing was that I went to Ashford to find out the area that we were looking at was the one on the other side of the Meadows, which was that field that was a site submissions, but Ashford is one that Ashford turned down. So I asked Simon Cole sort of why it had been turned down, and he came back to say that it was considered as a detrimental impact on the landscape at this key entrance to the village, and was relatively more remote from local services in the village than other alternatives. He then went on to say, of course, this assessment was of the whole site, and so development of only a proportion of it would naturally have a reduced landscape impact. So that brings that site back into consideration.
Very useful, thank you.
Okay. So that site, of course, was, just to go back over the history, it was rejected by Ashford when the site submissions went in 2013 or 14.
And
for the same reason.
Lots has changed since then.
That's what I wanted.
Exactly.
That was it.
Exactly.
Thank you for doing that, that's really helpful.
Exactly. At the moment,
Good
also,
job.
of course, we're waiting to hear what they do about the Lloyds group site. Okay, let's move on. The next thing is the drones and whether we want to respond to the consultation. we got something from Weald of Kent pointing out the consultation. I certainly do take the view that drones are an accident waiting to happen and a menace waiting to happen, or are happening. The question is a very complicated consultation whether we want to join in on that or not. Their anxiety is that they'll destroy a piece of the area, as indeed some of the little things that we have
more than
do already.
motorbikes
There could be a lot more
tearing down through the village. More than motorbikes.
Yeah,
tearing
more
down
of those
through the
things.
village.
Well, I just think when
Doubt
we're in
it.
on the flight path to Lyd, that might preclude drones coming over here anyhow, and the noise might be greater.
And they're just a bit lower. They can't go above 1,000 feet.
Well, the thing about the commercial drones, that Amazon deliveries in this village, there will be a target for drones straight
I
away.
think more of the problem for me is that whoever it is that every Wednesday or Thursday decides to do their aerobatic display over the village as well. And that's
Somebody else mentioned that to
yeah,
me.
that's every week unless it's raining or cloudy.
She was going to keep a diary as to when these things when it is.
So they come, and there was another plane that flew over about half an hour the other week, but literally just.
Is it a plane or a
here.
drone?
No, this was actually a
Plane.
plane. I'm just saying this is
Yeah,
more
yeah.
of a concern. I've never
Yes.
seen a drone in Wittersham.
Problem
Perhaps
with
it was
drones,
so high.
problem with drones, apart from the noise, though, is going to be accidents.
Yeah, but
set off and
you said about the noise, the disturbance.
noise,
I think that's the
Weald
issue. Yeah.
Weald of Kent is concerned about noise. I think the accidents.
That's a
Well, are we
story.
going to ask our clerk to womanfully struggle through the consultation?
How does our clerk feel about it?
I'm sure I know how she feels about it.
Will it have any impact if we do it? What impact would there be?
I kind of read through that, and I was sitting down there, sort of trying to work through your question there. And I thought it's incumbent on everybody having, if they want to have a say, to say it.
Yeah.
I thought, is this a question of my own view or wearing a parish councillor hat? And I sort of opted for the latter. And then I just sort of took the view that we've got some big issues to wrestle with, the housing being one of them, even speeding, I don't know. You know, there's a limited amount of time and effort we can put into this. And I'm always of my mind that you either go in and do something properly or you don't do it. Yeah. And I think that maybe this is one of those things that we could legitimately say was time and resource, that we would say to individual members, if you'd like to respond as an individual resident, then fine. But how much time can we allocate as a parish council to spend on doing a reply properly and thoroughly? And I don't believe right now we've got that spare capacity. That's just a thought.
I very much agree with that. I think we can use Ireland better.
All right, let's not spend our time now then. We'll skip the drones. The next thing then is the SIDS update. Our clerk can tell us the latest news on that.
Right, I've progressed this. The information that we were given back in April last year, which is when we first started talking about it before we got any funding, has changed. KCC has tightened up its location selection process following various issues at other projects. They also now require evidence of public consultation from the parish before any order is processed. Following several incidents where posts have been installed outside or near to properties, they now insist that all residents have a chance to voice any opinions on the matter to the parish within a fair amount of time. How we choose to approach objections is up to us, but he, this is Toby Donlan from KCC, considers it would be a great shame for a positive speed reduction scheme to attract any avoidable hostility. He has revisited the sites, because I went round with him in the first place. The one by the green, up opposite the Lamb, and opposite the church are probably still okay, but the one in Swan Street, as the grass verges are not KCC property, that knocks that one out. The one in Poplar Road is still possible, but it appears that the grass verges along there do not form part of the highway boundary, which is where we're going to put it. Therefore, any installation would have to be on the footpath, width permitting, and is directly outside a property, which we knew at the time. All three would need to be consulted on. So that's where we are with that.
So this is all very unhelpful. It's taken over a year to find that they've changed their position.
Do we still have the funding?
Yes.
Yeah,
I've got the bank.
Oh, you've got the bunny bank. Oh,
The
good.
issue about not going on grass verges that aren't highway property is sort of half understandable and half not understandable. It did occur to me, although Kent may take a different view, Sue, that since there was a desire to get one into Swan Street, if the grass doesn't belong to the highway, it belongs to the householder. And
We've always been told that
it
from
belongs to the highway,
there
of course.
to there is highways.
Highways, yes.
Yeah, that's the usual thing. They say they own a metre either side.
Yes.
But now they've decided they don't.
Is that everywhere?
Well, just no, Swan Street.
Oh,
and
that's-
Poplar Road.
Poplar Road where they've got grass verges.
That's ridiculous.
So does that mean that my house boundary now extends to the tarmac?
Probably goes in the middle of the road.
Does it say middle of the road normally?
Or not.
Yeah.
Well, no, I don't want to be responsible for the road. This is a slippery slope.
Maybe.
Well,
Well, I
maybe
don't know, there's
not.
an downside to it. I could put my traffic calming measure
Land's
outside
expanding
my
on that.
house.
Actually,
If you're considering planning permission up to the road, then you probably...
Okay, look.
no, I'm thinking more of a toll gate.
Okay,
colours.
let's not spend too much time on this, but the fact is that, as usual, the law is in a complete mess on this. Highways are sort of half here and half there and half...
Can I just ask one
Isn't there
question?
a-
Seriously, the one outside the church.
Opposite the church. Up
What's-
the road a bit from the...
Yeah,
By the
but
That's-
vicarage.
that's-
because one of the residents expressed concern last year about where the pole was going to go, because they did point out that actually you have to have a SID that gives enough warning. You can't have it right on the 30 mile.
No,
Yeah.
no, 30
Yeah.
mile, because the 30
So-
mile limit is further down.
Yeah, but so that's why I
Yes.
sort of thought when you said
Yes.
outside the church,
Yes.
I thought,
No,
wait a
it's-
minute, that's well in.
Yes, that's where it has to be, because this is where he went through.
So it
He said
reminds
it
you,
can't-
go through the 30 mile limit and then
Yeah,
it
then-
reminds you that you're going more than 30
Oh,
miles.
it's not to detect speed before people get there.
No,
to slow
no,
down.
No, it's to tell them what they're doing when they're within
How far
the
over?
30
A
mile
speed
limit.
indicator device.
There's no point telling them...
Yeah, I
that
know
they're
that.
doing
I've worked out that.
Okay, there's no point telling them they're doing 40 when they're allowed to do 40. You want to tell them that they're doing 40 when they shouldn't be.
Well, having said that, the one up
difference?
there
Hmm.
that tells you you're doing 40 when you're about half a mile up road
Yeah.
by your
Yeah.
house,
Yeah.
at least warns you to slow down when you get to the 30 miles. It has some purpose. That does help.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
But do you think people take any notice?
Well, that's another
I
issue.
do.
That's a different thing.
Because I've
Can I
managed
just-
to get it once.
You said 2 of them were okay and 2 of them now aren't.
I was very proud
Is there
of
any
that.
point in
well,
going
go
for
from your
quick wins and going for the ones that we
Another
can
one
do?
who goes pairing past the house.
We've still got to consult.
Yeah, but if we can do 2, why don't we do 2? Be better than having none.
Yes, I agree with George.
I don't disagree with George, but if, for argument's sake, Sue was able to figure that one of the householders didn't mind having it on the
Yeah.
grass verge, which Kent have now said belongs to the householder, then that removes their objection in principle, unless they're saying, oh no, we can't possibly do it unless it's on Kent land. which
Well,
is a slightly
hang on. I
different
think we need to clarify who owns the land, because otherwise, if it ends up a householder that kindly says, "Oh yes, just put it on our land," and there's something goes wrong, or a calf goes into it, and there's a liability
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
we really have to clarify who owns the land. In spite, I don't think.
No,
we
well,
can-
I'm talking about the fact that Kent say it belongs to the householder.
that might be a misunderstanding on Kent's part,
It could be, yeah.
given that it's not across the whole of Kent; it's just 2 roads.
All I'm trying to do here is to, if possible, rescue Swan Street as a potential
Yeah, no,
place,
yeah.
because they've ruled out the whole of Swan Street on the same basis. So it's a question of saying, okay, is there someone who's the right sort of distance?
Could we just remind
Well, yes,
ourselves
it's
who the
something
who the
like
authority
That's right.
who signed off on the fact that Swan Street is not owned, the verge is not owned by the
KCC.
No, but who?
This
one that
this
went
chap,
round with
Toby
It-
Dunham.
would maybe we could invite him to have a second thought about that, because the implications for the rest of Kent are quite significant. If he's actually now declaring that it's KCC policy that all highways end at the asphalt,
Well,
I
it's
think
not
he's
quite,
probably.
because they go round cutting the grass.
I was going to say
Well,
that
exactly.
they come down cutting
I
grass.
think maybe he's made an administrative error.
Well, when they think about
It's
it.
extraordinary that you could say that.
Oh,
I don't think.
and then Poplar Road, obviously, it's not quite the same because he ruled out one site, but not necessarily a different.
Yes, I think maybe that he's might like to revisit his decision.
Hmm.
Right, we'll ask Yvonne to put that into diplomatic terms.
But could we consider what I'm suggesting, that we might then go ahead with the 2 that we can do,
Okay.
rather than think
The,
leave it until someone gets run over?
potential issue, and it's only potential, George, the potential issue there is that for the contractor to come along
Yeah.
with their post-sinking system are going to charge more for doing 2 and more later than doing all 4, but that's the thing.
We've still got to do
The consultation.
yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Alternatively, of course, we could do is in parallel, we could just go ahead and put the post in, right? And
No, that's the
KCC
whole problem.
couldn't possibly object, because it's not their land, right? We
They're
can just go ahead and do it.
They're providing the post.
Can have a load of posts.
And indeed the contractor who puts it in. If you remember, the posts are expensive because it includes sinking them in the
£1,500, isn't it?
ground.
Post or something.
Okay.
So what are we doing about the
Let's leave it to the clerk to go back and talk to KCC, and at the same time, where we do know where we want to put them, do some consultation with those householders.
Parish consultation, not just.
Yeah. Oh, got to be the whole.
Yes,
No, this is going to be
Yeah.
a sledgehammer to crack a nut. Now, I think we need to go back, we'll quietly have a word with them and say, we think there may be something to reconsider here, because the implications that you're now declaring that your ownership of highways ends at the asphalt is contrary to what we've been thinking about for several centuries.
It depends as well on the detail in the consultation. If we're consulting on whether people think it's a good idea to have SIDS on these 4 roads,
I thought
as
it was
opposed
for the
to
locations.
as opposed to the actual physical locations, what
Yeah.
it is we're consulting on, and that's the issue, isn't it?
Exactly.
That's a good point. I mean, we could end it.
I thought it was
Anyone
the
who
same.
might want to say, no, I don't want it outside my house, anywhere but my
I thought
house.
that's what it was about.
Yes.
Not in my backyard.
Yeah.
Because what they did
It's
before,
your housing association.
No.
what they did before was to put it in
Don't
places,
tell
and
Sid
then the
is the
people who
attitude.
were there complained, and that's what they're trying to get under.
Oh, yeah, I understand. Yeah.
We'll leave
But there
you
does
to
seem
try
a
and make
genuine
some
concern
progress.
even tonight.
So
I'm
I'm
just
just
It'll
going
be
to
interesting.
speed and noise.
Well, that's for a
restriction.
start.
Mm.
That's for a start, because no point consulting where
We're
we're
on
not
a
going to
main
get one.
road and we just
No.
doesn't.
What's happening really is that it's becoming a drawn-out process. Very drawn out. Okay, we'll leave. It's going to be iterative. We're not going to fix it in one jump. It's going to be to and froing for another year, sadly. Meanwhile, people are complaining. We'll direct them to KCC. Maybe KCC should buy the verges. Okay, let's move on, sadly. To consider any action to be taken with regard to the change of KCC policy on free school transport. Well, this is a humdinger. Before you all arrived, Sue was reporting, and you might like to do that again.
Well, I've been at a governor's meeting at Homewood this evening before I came here. The school are horrified. This is the first year it's actually happened. They can't understand it, but they are backing the pupils or parents, pupils. And I understand that Michael is involved in it, although he has passed his file on to Roger Goff, who's the children and something else.
Minister of Equipment.
The parents are all putting in appeals, and a lot of them are hoping that Michael was actually going to speak for them at the appeal. But Michael, the school, me personally, don't think that's a good idea. We'd rather it didn't go to appeal. We'd rather the whole system was sorted out. Otherwise, we're going to have some children who get it and some who don't. It's a ridiculous situation.
And Forge Meads is the sort of boundary line almost, isn't
No.
it? According to this, is that not how I read it? Someone mentioned Forge Meads.
This is the boundary line, this road.
This
Some
road.
people have got it and some people haven't.
Yeah.
It's all over the place.
Well, I read it through, and
It's
I
ludicrous.
first of all I read it and I thought, I must have misread this. There's absolutely no way it's barking mad. And then I thought, wait a minute, they must be saying they're trying to get rid of some of the pupils in Kent and offload them into Sussex
What's
and make
happened?
them go to Rye College. I thought,
Yeah.
why would they do that?
What's happened is
It's
the
just-
KCC have changed their policy, and they used to before draw a circle round where the school, and if you were within that catchment area, you got free travel.
Yeah.
But it didn't include out of county schools; only included schools within Kent. Now they've changed it, or last year they changed it to include schools in other counties. So of course Rye, for some people who live down that end of the village, is closer than Homewood, and that's why it's changed. So now people that live there and halfway up the road and on this side, some people have not got it. My daughter has still got it, but
She won't lose it.
She won't lose
No,
it.
she
She's
won't lose
all right. But the person down the road, whose daughter is in the same year as my daughter, and this is what kicked it all off, because she's been going there for 3 years, like my daughter. When her other daughter got into Homewood,
it was confirmed she
and
had
they,
it.
yeah, they applied for their bus pass. They were then told they weren't going to get one. And when he said, but my other daughter gets one, they said, oh dear, we'll have to take that one away then.
No.
So they've taken the other one away. So from Christmas she won't have one either.
No.
This is bonkers.
So the issue
That's
is
not
that they're
what KCC
two issues
says.
that nobody told people when they were applying for their schools that was going to be an issue. And the other thing is they're applying it retrospectively to pupils that have already been going to Homewood for 3 years at least.
Well, you've got letters going out saying you've got it, and then a few weeks later...
You only need to think of one thing which shows how, I mean, George's point, how flawed that is. You have a situation where someone goes to Homewood for argument's sake, and when they've been there, and they have free transport, because under government policy you have automatic free transport if you're over 3 miles and you're going to your nearest school. They do make it clear it's the nearest school. There's a separate issue about whether Rye is actually nearer according to which way you go up Man's Lane and all the rest of it. But if you imagine that you are going to Homewood because it's your nearest school, you are legally entitled to free transport, and Rye decides to move their school and all of a sudden builds one that's closer to you, then all of a sudden are you moving at end of the third or fourth year to go to a different school because it's closer? Because otherwise you don't get it. Well, obviously not. So, I mean, what this has done is open a complete can of worms. Now, just to add to what Sue said, I spoke to Mike Hill last Thursday or Friday for 10 minutes. He confirmed that he has put the whole thing in the hands of Roger Goff, the Cabinet Member for Education. He said, in defending him, he said, I don't expect for a moment he knew about this or knew about the ramifications, but he certainly does now, he said, because I've given it to him. He is very much of the view that they should try and head off appeals. He thinks it's completely wrong that they should resile from anything they've agreed to, because he says it brings them into disrepute. That's his personal feeling. If they've given it, they can't take it away again. But he does also say that budgets are tight and their school transport budget is serious. And he then went on, and this is, to be honest, a different subject in a way. It's a bit like the Tim Naylor thing and the few. He said, you know, there's some that are so expensive we have to send special needs children all the way to Tunbridge Wells every day in a taxi.
Yeah.
Well, that's going to cost them a lot of money. Putting someone on a Bates bus, Holland and Bates, whatever they're called, to Scotland and Bates to Homewood isn't going to cost them a bean. I mean, it may do in the contract that every seat brings money or something, but to be honest, you know, they're in a muddle.
Cost you £400 to buy it.
Just a quick question, the information here. Has any input been received from East Sussex County Council? Because presumably one would all hope that they're aware that there are a load of children now being transported over the border to Rye College.
Potentially.
Well, they're not. Their parents are taking them into Homewood.
Well, no, but potentially, yes, and
that's the other issue,
again is a complete, you know.
Will they get free transport then?
I don't know what the the East Sussex policy is.
There's government policy. If
Yeah,
they go to
East Sussex will have
one,
to
it's
pay it instead of
mandated.
Kent paying it.
Yes, East Sussex will have to pay it. We don't, of course, even know if their place is at Rye.
No, that's
and I
the
gather Rye is not as highly regarded a school as Homewood, so this is government choice policy.
Okay,
But
so my question then is,
Mr.
are the people this side, i.e. the Rye side, in this village who go to Rye College that we know of?
There are some,
and
but that wasn't anything to do.
No,
yeah.
but I just wondered, do they get free transport?
I don't know. I don't know. They've only moved into the village
Well, should
recently.
do.
So.
Well, sorry, if they're nearest, if it's the nearest one.
Yeah.
Well, according to this
They've only
ruling,
moved
it
in
must be
recently.
the nearest one, mustn't
Yeah.
it? You
Well,
can't have two nearest.
Helen Thompson, who wrote the letter, lives in the house next door here.
Right.
That's Molly, her daughter, that has been refused.
Mm-hmm.
I live opposite her virtually, and my daughter hasn't been refused.
Well,
So that's how fine the line is.
it's
But the
bonkers.
ridiculous thing is that Helen actually got a letter
Yes,
stating she got the transport.
yes, yes.
The contractor, a week later, she gets who it is.
Yeah.
And then on the 1st of September, she gets a letter saying, "Oh, we've made a mistake."
After they bought uniforms and iPads and everything else they have to get for them.
Touch of the W1A, I think.
It is crazy. Well, okay, what's our position on
So
this?
what can we do?
Any action to be taken? As a village, it's concerning. I mean, I think that I understand the cross-border thing. You know, you can't say that everyone automatically stays within their county.
No.
But certainly when it's a very narrowly based thing, according to, you know, the one-way system and whether the coach goes along the big road and all the little road and all the rest of it, you don't kind of go over the border needlessly. No one would have places. It seems to me that we arguably can say that as a village it makes sense that KCC should get their act together and listen.
Shouldn't it really be? I mean, the point about this surely is that it should be, excuse the pun, driven by where the child goes to school, where the school place is, not the fact. Because to my mind, if I would say to Roger Goff, well, surely, hang on a minute, if you're saying that the school place isn't valid, the transport isn't valid in that direction, you're essentially saying they've got to change schools to Rye College.
And they endorsed them going to Homewood in the first place.
That's
exactly. Well, exactly.
So I'm talking about retrospective.
Yeah, but also you can't just, one county council surely can't start making arbitrary decisions on another county council's education strategy and budget.
No. Well, it seems they think they can.
Well, that's why I said it'd be interesting to know if anybody in East Sussex was aware of this, because if I was an East Sussex county councillor, I'd find this quite disturbing that basically KCC county councillors were saying,
thanks for coming.
You know, so in terms of our response, you know, the bottom line is that I would put forward the fact that we can't say we think this is untenable, but we have to find a form of words that doesn't.
Well, it's unfair is the word, isn't it? I mean, unfair.
So what we should do then is to write a letter to, I guess, Mike Hill rather than Roger Goff.
Yes.
Saying that we have taken the view as a parish council that in slightly more polite terms, that the Kent County Council change of policy and change of mind in barking. It needs rescinding immediately. We give it no support whatever, and if they don't get on with it, we'll snitch to Amber Rudd.
And we fully support the established principle, previously established principle, that children of residents in our village who go to Kent schools should.
No, it's not Kent schools.
Yes.
Because if they go to Ashford,
the
parents have to pay because it's not the nearest school.
Even though it's
the nearest
Kent policy that they should be able to go to grammar schools, they won't pay for transport to go there. Again, it's not reasonable.
Well, we have to find out.
Yes, that's the other way. Only people in Ashford get a free bus to Homewood, but people in Wittersham don't get have to pay.
No, they have to pay. Coming in from Ashford because it's not their nearest school.
What, for secondary?
Yes.
Okay.
They have to pay.
Well, I think we had to find a
Can we put
form of
together
words
something like that?
Mike needs to know that as far as we're concerned, we think this is an iniquitous interpretation, and we fully support the parents of children in our village to continue to get free transport.
So you're either asking kids now in year 3 onwards to change schools, just as they're starting the GCSEs, or you're asking families with younger children now to have 2 different schools, one's going to go to Rye, one's going to go to Homewood, they're having to pay to go to Homewood, or they're going to have to not pay to go to Homewood and drive them to Homewood that way and drive them to Rye that way.
which hang on, that's an interesting point there, because that adds to private vehicle usage of the roads, remembering that our roads will get busy because of the increased house construction in Tenterden. You've got to tie the argument together there.
Right, makes no sense for everyone.
If they can sell any of the houses. If they can sell any of the houses.
Oh, aren't they selling them?
It's just been suggested by Mick that we consider copying that to Damien Green. I don't see why we shouldn't.
Yes.
Well, you want to move to Amber Rudd. I mean, you could spend one MP.
I mean, I don't know why we don't copy it to Amber Rudd, because as you said, you know, it's straight into her constituency. We may as well give it a good stir.
Damien's got
because
to do
I think Kent, I mean, it's not Roger Goff, almost certainly, but Kent officers have dug a hole here.
Yes.
Okay, let's move on.
It's not the same chap who works on the SID department.
No, let's move on. Okay, thank you.
digging this hole.
Community Resilience Workshop on the 6th of October. Now, you've all seen an email about that. I think this is, but I may be disappointed, I think this is an aim by Calc, KCC, whoever, to start trying to reformulate the sort of emergency planning notion into something slightly different. Emergency planning is how will we run around like ants when something happens, and the resilience, I think, is trying to say, can we actually prepare the way, not just to have a few people that we ring up, but to actually know what we would do, who we would do it with, and how we try and avoid the crisis getting out of hand in the first place. Now, it may be that's what we're going to hear, it may not be. What I would suggest anyway, I've said to Yvonne that I'm willing to go to it. She would like to come and I will give her a lift so she doesn't have to pay
You might want
expenses.
to ask, given the press coverage 2 days ago of the impending civil unrest and disorder forecast for Kent next year, post-Brexit. But community resilience does actually come into that.
Indeed. So anyway, I don't know if anyone else wants to go, but the two of us will anyhow.
Grateful to you for volunteering.
It may or may not be worthwhile.
Must be a grant,
obviously.
isn't
Sue, are you waving your pen to say something? No.
No.
Sorry, I didn't mean to accuse you of
No.
that. You did look as though you might be about to.
No.
Keep your pen still.
No, I thought that was a thinking time. Okay, payments for authorisation. The War Memorial, 925.
Very nice.
I think everyone's seen it and it looks very nice.
Yes, it does.
I think it meets Alan's requirement not to be too clean.
You know, Leslie and I, Yvonne looked at it this morning. Well, I've looked at it before, but we looked at it this morning. And I said, it is nicely done.
It is well done. Okay, correspondence. The next one then, which is linked, is... oh, by the way, when we were doing the schools, of course, we were unanimous with the exception of George, who couldn't comment. So the correspondence, John Jordan would like us to consider purchasing at £250 a silhouette to be placed at the War Memorial. You, I guess, have got a non-pecuniary interest there, actually.
Well, it's not a George, is it?
No.
Is this like the one for an outside stone?
There's lots in Stoke.
There's lots around Stone Soldiers.
And we have one in our village.
Yeah.
We've got one outside the church, which is similar.
So,
Same as that.
George apart, what do people think about this, Alan?
It seems quite expensive, but I think if we've got the money, I think it's not a bad idea.
Well, someone's offering to sponsor one.
No, that's in the drawn.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Sorry.
They're going to put the money in without the ornament.
Yes, they're giving a donation. I did add it to the...
Well, is it enough to buy one?
Sorry?
Is it enough to buy one? The donation? Is
No,
it
I
enough?
don't.
I misread it. I thought someone had basically said, I'm going to buy the man if you want to buy the woman.
Yes, well, that's what they said originally, but they have now rescinded that. They are going to give a donation.
Which may or may not
how
be
much?
the same amount.
No,
we
I don't know.
know.
It's their decision.
All we know is
Okay, so they are expensive, these. I applaud Stone's ability. I think I've counted 4 or maybe 5. I didn't realise they were £250 each.
Because it's not the cost, it's what they are charging as a donation to have one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You could make your own.
What do we do with it afterwards?
Doesn't
If
it
you made
stay
your
there?
own, it would be dumped on a skip, wouldn't it? You see what I mean? If you made your own, because you could probably make your own for a
Well, won't they stay
fraction
there?
of the cost.
But this is about giving the RBL money, it's not about how much
Yeah,
it
this
costs
is right.
to buy
It's a big poppy in effect.
A big poppy, yeah.
Big poppy.
Okay,
So
Sue,
they're
what do you
being
think?
taken out, are they, after the event?
The one by the church will come up to the memorial on the 11th, and then go
Well,
back to the church.
that's what I'm thinking, if it's coming from the church.
Why do we need another?
Why do we need one?
It just seems an awful lot of
Okay.
money
All right.
when we've got one in the village.
Okay, I'm not for doing this. You know, I think we do our normal 100 and anything else we get to. Does anyone else want to do this?
So I can be easily persuaded of the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, me
Sue
too.
not. You not? Okay.
So,
So no, I'm sorry, we'll turn that one down.
but do reinforce the fact that we will make the usual donation, which is
Yeah.
2/5 of one.
For the meeting, yeah, okay.
And that we have got one in the village.
Indeed, yeah.
And
Okay.
George is going to carry it up the road.
We've actually got some others because
Tapped under his arm.
Howard made some to go in the church when it was the
Oh,
display. Remember
Yes.
Christmas?
Oh, yeah.
We've got those as well, so we have got some
So
extra
who
ones.
who owns the one at the church? The RDO?
Well, it's
Outside the church,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's well done.
Okay, so carer support, they thanked us for the donation. Another plaudit for our clerk. She's had the audit completed. No comments
No
or
comment.
recommendations, and the
Well
notice
done.
is up. As I put it to Yvonne, she got away with it another year.
It's not nice, is
No.
it?
not
Excellent
very
anyway. I know that it takes a lot of work to
Yeah.
try and figure out what the numbers are supposed to be because it's a very convoluted form. Okay,
Well done.
working party reports, caretaker.
Well, it's just that, as probably most of you know, Alf does have a problem with his back. He's having treatment, he's having an MRI scan, he's having physio. He can grass cut when he's sitting on his machine, it's not a problem, but hedge cutting
That
is...
was one of my questions I was asking. There's the answer already. No?
Yeah. However, the hedges are obviously a problem.
Yes.
So I've spoken to Robert Pudan, and he has said that he will cut round the green and Coronation Field, and also the one that's outstanding at Canardington, the big one by the Wish. However, I'm being Alf. I did say last week to him I was concerned about the brambles that were coming out of the one by the green where the footpath is that the kids use once they cross the road, and that I was going to go up with my secateurs and do something about it, to which he said, no. I've spoken to Lee, our voluntary community.
I'm sending her out.
We'll go with him and we'll do something about it. Well, that was last week.
I'll do it in the morning. Oh, it's done.
Done. So I saw him this morning and I mentioned it again. He said, this was when I said, well, I've got Robert Pudan is going to go out next week. He couldn't do anything for the first 2 weeks, but he can do it next week. However, I came past just now and it's been cut.
Okay. Because last year I did.
All of it. But he has done the bit that
that was a problem. Yeah.
So it is. So I've now got to tell Robert.
I thought it was some plan to get as close as we could to Armistice Day, then cut it, and I had to do it again before then. That was what they were doing.
No, I am arranging, and I mean he says it isn't any worse. It's not getting worse, his back. He gets pain down his leg, apparently. And it's not the same problem he has before.
It's going to be such a pity if we let it get out of control, so I'm sure you've done the right thing.
All right, okay. Anything else on caretaker?
No.
Okay. Finance, the monthly statement that you've had circulated.
Right, obviously there's a lot, just a couple of comments I made on it. Right, we had a refund from Ashford on the planning fee for the churchyard path, because although we put the planning application in, they wanted more details, which I had to get from the school, and the school just haven't come back with it, so that's been put in abeyance at the moment. So we got the money back, they didn't hold on for it any longer. And we had, way back, a year or so more now ago, I had a request from Mr. and Mrs. Gleeson, who live in Essex. It's the relatives. They wanted a double plot in the cemetery, but wanted to wait until we had our new bit to choose a new place. But they've since decided that no, they don't now want to be buried in Wittersham. They've got relatives that will be that are buried in Essex, so they want to go with them instead.
I originally thought some had booked the places and then recovered, so they didn't need it.
Okay, right.
It's only temporary recovery.
There's something else, I've written it down. Oh yes, I'm attending the Clerks Conference.
Indeed.
So that's...
So you haven't got a scramble for places, is what you're saying, in the new cemetery?
No.
Well, I have got somebody that is still wanting, once we've got it all sorted and planned, that wants a place. Because I can't give them what they want in the present one. But
everyone happy that I signed this?
Yep.
Under the trees.
on this one?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So then we go on to planning. So Yvonne has listed as usual the ones that have come through. Now the house report, removal of the downstairs bathroom, mine's sort of done its columns all rather differently, but I haven't got any result on that.
That's because it's missing.
Oh, that's
Somebody
missing.
is sitting on this application.
Oh, that's the one you spoke about. Okay. So.
Well, I know where I last saw it. I put it in your letterbox.
Did you pass it?
Oh, when?
On the date that's written on there.
I have had two. I have
Yeah, that was both from me.
two on.
Yeah.
I
So-
think you brought them to me, and I put them
Yes.
in.
That's
No,
right.
this is a different one.
I put them in Sue's
Yes.
letterbox about.
Did
No,
everybody,
no, this is different.
has everybody seen the ones we were talking about today?
Yes.
Everyone's seen the Ewan Lamb one?
Yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
everyone saw the Windrush?
Yes.
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 So there is one.
Well, I gave it to Paul.
Yep. And I've passed it on.
Probably
To Leslie.
everybody there,
Three.
I haven't seen that.
A
Yep.
couple of weeks ago. Must have been a couple of weeks ago, mustn't it?
I've been waiting for it to come back.
Well, because we'll all go home and search.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll go home and search. We were away, but
So who hasn't seen it? Have you seen it?
well, it's come to
think
me.
I have.
Apparently, it's
I
me.
haven't
I haven't seen it.
Oh, unless it's in Collins.
It's,
No.
it's gone beyond the date, but it was one that I passed around for comments
There are
because it
two
was
house
listed building
reports.
consent.
Are we talking about the one with
This is the one with the listed
Yeah.
building, and my question there was
Yeah,
Yeah, and
the
I chased
letter.
it again and he's
Well, I
still-
don't think we can make any sort of decision on that or comment, because to me it all hinges on the letter. They took advice from this lady Angela or Audrey at Ashford Borough Council, who wrote to them giving the advice. Now, if the advice said no, you're a listed building, you need planning consent for that, and they went ahead and ignored it, that's one scenario. Or if she said no, you're a listed building but you don't need planning consent, and they went ahead, then that's what I would look at sympathetically. But that letter is absolutely key to the evidence. Sorry, it's key evidence to the decision, because if frankly she was, they had this lady, the officer advised that they needed planning permission, and they just put two fingers up and then went ahead.
Anecdotally, I think that's what has happened.
Well, where do we stand on that? It's a Grade 2 listed building, they need planning permission, and they decide, you know what, doesn't apply to me. And then later
We'll
on
do
they
it,
apply
and then 5
retrospectively.
years later we'll apply for it.
And whether or not that gets granted, I would not like to see the parish council say that's okay.
I mean, has anybody been
Lovely
inside
house.
the house at Palstrey Court?
No.
I mean, it's a lovely house on the outside. Inside, whoever did it really should have been done over, because it's lots of silly little corridors, and it was done in the days in the 50s when you had to heat your rooms with a coal or 1 bar electric fire. So you all had small rooms and then corridors going. I grew up in a house like that, so I know. And these days with central heating, you can knock the walls down, you can still have a reasonably warm house. But Lorna McDowell lived in the 40s and the 50s. And they were told,
in the 90s.
they were told, I think, when they got somebody out, sorry, it's planning and it's listed, you can't do it, you can't knock any of these partitions and walls out.
Even though, of course, they weren't there in the old days.
Indeed.
They were put in since.
Indeed.
But
And they were told they couldn't do
They
that.
always like them to stay as they are.
And the mistake they made was calling somebody in at that point. They should have just done it without calling somebody in.
I'm recording all this.
Sorry, yes, but they did, and I think they were advised
Allegedly.
they couldn't do it, and then they thought this is silly, and then they didn't. I think they then did.
Typically people, and I don't know the people concerned, but typically people go for retrospective in a situation when they're looking to sell a property, because a search will raise these things, and if they've mentioned it or someone has spotted it, which has happened, I've seen it happen in the past, they then suddenly have to get retrospective planning permission, otherwise it's going to scupper their sale potentially. So I'm just inclined to say they've alleged a letter that was sent. They alleged a letter was received, and let's see a copy of it if it exists. If the letter, and it's not. It was only 2000 and When was the letter, Yvonne? Was it 2012?
They said they'd done the work 2012 or 13 or something.
But the letter from Ashford Borough Council, they named an officer. That should at least be in the record somewhere, I would have thought. If we get hold of the letter, and if the letter says one thing and they've done another, or if the letter says, yeah, don't worry, go ahead, then that must bear some weight on our decision, I would have thought.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. We've got to find the documents.
Well, can they just go ahead and give this retrospective then without producing the letter?
No, I had it and I gave it to Paul. I think Jeremy gave it to me. Yep. I gave it to Paul.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you did with it then.
I put it through the top slot of because you've got 2-story box, and he went through the top one.
A couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
It's got to be a couple of weeks, hasn't it?
All right, let's move on.
Might
We won't
find
solve
it.
tonight. Decisions received are all there. What?
And I have also the Buds Oast. I've had thing through today. It's been granted. That's for the log store.
Oh, that's on there.
Yeah, it's on there.
Yes, but it's one we considered.
Yes.
It's now been.
Yeah, it says
Should-
decisions
we did.
received.
Yeah.
So
Okay. All right, so we've got them. Now, Alan wanted to raise a point on the land on the south side of Parish Court. Parish Court is a bit of a hotbed at the minute.
It is.
Alleged siting of mobile home for residential accommodation.
Well, I know Nick's been... Sorry,
I was just going to say, which may be the same thing, Alan. I've had an email in today from a resident whose name I won't mention. I wonder if you could discuss the illegal mobile home Parish Court on the other side of the road, and the fact that they are living here, despite fobbing the ABC off by saying that they're there just during the day. I said, well, it's all being enforced, and the story I was given today was enforcement came along, talked to them, they said, oh no, we don't live here at night, we only just visit during the day. The story here is, well, yes they do, they're there all night with a generator running. They've also teed off the small bore water pipe opposite the bungalow, which sits on the other side of the road. Southern Water are not bothering with this infringement, presumably because they're too windy to take up the issues with these type of people. And it's probably going through someone else's meter anyway. Well, it depends, of course, whether it is off a T already or whether it's off the road.
It's not metered down there.
Not metered, okay. The incumbent has also expressed his desire in the porter cabin to rip out the hedge on the roadside and replace it with very high, close boarded fencing, which it suggested shouldn't happen in an AONB. I don't know if that's the case or not. So sorry to bother you with this, but I think early intervention is worth 10 times a late intervention. I guess what you would say, Alan, would be pretty similar.
It would. I mean, one or two bits of background information.
Please.
You might remember at the July meeting I mentioned that I had spotted it for sale. At £55,000 with potential for conversion of a barn. Actually, it went through Rush and Wilson for £225,000. So I think they bought it with a pretty firm intention of thinking that they could get a dwelling on it. They certainly are living there, and they've got a fierce dog or two.
And a sign saying guard dogs running free.
Yeah. And they put that boarding up at the area where we approved the access, which is fine. I don't think they've done anything wrong there, although it's horrid. And you're right, he is talking about extending the panel fencing right along and taking the hedge up. Now, I'm not sure whether... I was hoping Mary and Miriam would be here, because then we could set them on to the AONB aspect and they would sort him out, but they're not.
All the hedgerow regulations aspects, which I haven't gone back to again before.
But I mean, I know that in the Palstrey Court little circle, and in fact further afield, Brugden and down Argyle way, there is quite a lot of agitation, and there are emails flashing around saying the parish council must do something, and I've tried to.
They can't, frankly.
Well, the parish council has done something.
Yes, indeed, and that's where I need to be able to report back.
Yvonne pushed it onto Ashford, but the only people who can enforce are Ashford.
Yes.
Would you like me to?
Yes.
Feel free.
Having received that email this morning, and having been told, having seen the copy of the letter from Lucy to say that it was in Lucy Holloway to say that Ashford were aware and were dealing with it, I went to the officer that is dealing with it this morning She was very good and has come back to me to say, I said there's great consternation in the village over this site, and I'm being asked almost daily what the position is. I'm assured that the mobile home is being lived in with water having been connected and a generator on site. There is talk of the hedge being taken out and a close boarded fence being erected in its place. We have a meeting tonight, so could you give me an update on the situation from your point of view, please? She's come back to say, I have visited the site and spoken to the owner a couple of times. He assures me that an application is to be submitted for the conversion of the agricultural building. However, I have yet to receive this. I have spoken to the owner again today, who assures me that no one is living on site. However, he is on the land most days, tidying and clearing the land. I have a postal address for the developer and have written to him there. He explained that there was already water on site. However, he has updated the pipework and used a small generator at times. Please be assured I am aware of the site and your concerns, and I will continue to monitor the land and speak regularly to the owner.
But it's not in fact consistent quite with the facts, but it's a step from the right direction, of course.
A version of the facts.
At what stage is he liable for council tax?
When you improve his living, Larry.
Yeah.
I have a...
Because when I went past today, there's not only the mobile home and the agricultural dwelling, but there's also one of those what they call them in this country, Winnebago motorhomes, and a pickup truck. I mean, it looked like an encampment has suddenly sprung up there. It wasn't just one.
Are there lights on at night?
Yeah.
According to the person who sent me the email, the generator's running at night.
I mean, can we photograph?
I had
To
a copy
prove
of
that there's
email.
someone there at
And
night.
a previous email on that
Little
from
dust.
somebody else who distinctly said they didn't want their name mentioned.
Absolutely, that's why I didn't mention it.
No, that was the second one.
else.
There's another person that sent one.
No, indeed,
prior
I
to-
got that one as well.
Yeah, from there. Yeah. So,
Yes.
and I have followed this up with Lucy as well, like you have, so they realise that everybody's in. And I've got to hear that they're going to send another officer out to site this week. Well, whether that was the one that went out today, was that Joe that sent?
This is Abby.
Abby, all right.
She's the one that Lucy said was the officer.
Yeah, okay, I
She
don't
was
know which one.
she was on leave when Lucy
Right,
replied
yeah.
to your question.
Right. So the thing is, the crucial point is they've got to put in an application within a reasonable length of time to convert the barn, which they may or may not get permission for. If they don't, then they're going to be sent off.
What mechanism would be used to do that? The police?
Well, yeah, bailiffs.
Eventually.
Bailiffs, yes, I mean, yeah, okay.
In the same way as Hasseltown at High Holden.
Yeah.
I mean, there was 7 of them.
So, I mean, the planners will go that far, will
Oh,
they?
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you do you know Redbrook Street, Woodchurch, running through the High Holden, at the crossroads at High Holden now, there were 7 of them moved in there over Easter, East or Whitson, I can't remember. There's only 2 left now, and they're not being moved out because there's very young children there. They've got to go, but they've been given a little bit more time.
I mean, for the local
The
residents...
thing they don't do is make the place good up.
No.
So I mean, for the local residents who have been asking me at home what's to be done, I mean, the line I'm taking is that no bluster, take it gently, do it through the regular channels, be patient, but that in the end, the right result will
They can't go
prevail.
ripping the hedges up, or shouldn't go ripping.
Well, they shouldn't.
Well, the trouble is if they do, you can't put them back.
And that's right. But I mean, so I mean, they're nervous that patience and just doing it through the channels will allow him to get away with something that they're going to regret not having been more
Probably so, but I mean,
vigorous
if
about.
you want to get the vigilantes out, fine, don't tell me about it. I mean, that's the alternative.
Can we? Who are the village
Oh,
vigilantes?
Well, this is interesting.
Okay, let's move on.
Well,
We can't add anything else to that then.
Okay,
thank
so
you.
just reassurance, really. Yeah.
Well,
All right, let's move on.
Terrible
Highways
stories
report.
about these people.
No, there have been a number of holes being filled and what have you.
Find and fix.
Yeah, sorry, the find things. Well, they had a big find. I know it's probably not in our parish; it's just next, but at the top of the top road by the corner where Sue Williams' house is, they had heavy duty equipment, and they've resurfaced most of the road there. But for anyone else who's cycling on there, is a massive improvement to life, because it was one of the most dangerous parts on the island.
That was one of the things I put on Facebook, telling people
Okay.
that's going to be done. Just one thing that I would like to mention. They haven't reinstated the white lines up at the stocks or the cat's eyes. And they haven't done the cat's eyes down beyond Pillion Quarter either. I emailed Darren. He's sent it on to somebody else who asked him to come back to me, but he hasn't, so I'm in the process of chasing them up. But the white lining boards were up there a week ago, and I thought, oh great. But what they've done is a bit to the junction, not the main road.
I just think they'll have a job to actually white line that, because it's so rough. I've never seen tarmacking like it. They've done it in the night with their eyes closed.
They had a problem with the machine.
Yeah, I bet they did. It looks like it.
Okay.
Can I just say, while we're on highways, the triangle, we've now got, it's so high now, the ground, when you actually come around the corner this way, you can't see if anything's coming up the other way, and if you go to pull out into Popular Road, you can't see if there's anything coming down now, because of those big grass things that have sprung up, so I don't know, that's not really been very helpful.
Please everybody all the time.
Also around the War Memorial, you can hardly see the War Memorial now in its nice colours, because of the same thing, so I'm not sure that hasn't defeated the purpose of...
Well, the idea was you could see through them.
Well,
I take it that they're still sort
It's
of...
very attractive.
Well, it's very attractive. I'm not
Today
saying
that they're really.
they are, but
Are they perennials or?
I did have somebody
Some are, but I mean they'll die right
They'll
back.
die-
grasses
they'll die right
inside
back.
the War Memorial.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's the
All right,
grass.
last time.
yeah, that's the one.
How awful they look.
Not appropriate.
Okay.
It's all in
It's not till
perception,
November
isn't
the
it?
11th.
All right, we're getting on to the end of the season anyway on that. Public rights of way, do we have anything?
No, only that we've got dodgy styles, but
Sure, but some of them are getting replaced. Open spaces.
Oh, well, we can report on that, can't we? We inspected this morning.
Good.
And yes, I mean, apart from the obvious where the green and that, which the hedging that looked as if it needed attention, we've given an explanation why
We know.
it has that.
And something is going to be done about it.
Other than that, nothing.
Okay.
Coronation Field is looking a lot better because it's been cut again.
Yeah.
There's a lot of patches where the grass died because of some of the dead grass was left on it from last time, wasn't it? Anyway.
Okay.
Well, just one point on that. I did have the invoice from it, a few months ago now, for the first half, and it said as per contract. Normally they tell me how many they've done, but they didn't say that. So I just went back and said it hasn't been done as per contract. Please let me know the dates on which you attended. And I've heard nothing.
Well done.
So don't pay them then.
Well, no, I won't. No, I told you.
Okay.
And I haven't had a statement. Normally it can follow with a statement. I haven't had that.
They've probably no idea what they'd say to
No.
them.
All right. Okay. Cemetery and churchyard. We've talked about the cemetery
Yeah, that's what I
extension.
was going
Anything
to put
else?
here.
There's
No.
still nothing on the wall.
No, I need to follow that up.
I have to report I haven't done anything about the chest tombs as yet.
Okay.
I regarded that as a winter job.
Yes.
Sure. Do you have
Can
a
I just
report?
say, the only thing I would say on the churchyard, which I've already told Yvonne about, I had some friends of ours came over about 4 weeks ago now, and they were doing a tracing their relatives, one of whom was actually found a grave, but what they were appalled at was the amount of dog mess in the churchyard.
Yeah.
And I have spoken to Judy, and she said that Kerry did see somebody taking a dog in there about the time. So it could have been that. It wasn't anyone in the village, it wasn't a local.
Okay.
She's never seen anything since. She hasn't had any comments about it at all. And she doesn't want to go down the road of do not.
No, okay, perhaps it was just a
So,
one-off then, that
yes.
just happened to coincide with their visit. But
Yeah,
they were just,
yeah, she's on.
yeah,
But
okay.
as I say, Kerry did say that
Sure.
she'd seen
Okay.
something. So.
Thanks. Thank you.
Do you have anything on the village hall committee?
We haven't had a meeting for some time for various reasons. People have been away on holiday.
Sure.
But other than to say, we're moving on. Things I've got that light replaced. You may have noticed.
There was a
Excellent.
I did it myself. That's the only way to get anything done.
Right.
We're still trying to get quotes for the potholes at the front,
Right.
but we can't find anyone who's even remotely interested in doing it because it's such a small job. So if you come across anybody, I know you've got
do it.
yeah, I know you've got contacts in the tarmacking business.
They come from Eastbourne.
What about
Chris
Pankhurst?
It's not the village anymore.
Anyway,
Is
so
that
other than that, no. We're just,
And Steve said he's on the Wi-Fi case. when I
Steve's
asked
on the
him
Wi-Fi case. Yes, we're still trying to get that
Thanks,
sorted.
George.
And there was the spat on the day of the tennis tournament.
Oh, then let's go down that road.
All right. You've got the dates
Tables.
of things. Items for information, defib training.
Yes, this is something that Jean Elliott mentioned to me, that the WI were after a training. And if you remember, we did agree ages ago when John was chairman, he offered to do a training. So he's taking me to the Clerks Conference on Thursday, so I'm going to see if I can arrange a date.
Great.
And then if I can get it, I'll still be in time to put it into Outlooks so that it'll be on the range, so that anybody can come.
When he suggested John, he does it in an hour before film night, because then he's going to be here, potentially,
And then
people stay for the film.
Well, it gets all set up way beforehand, doesn't it?
We'll do it during film night as the interval.
All right, come on, let's carry
I'm
on.
ever so sorry. I left my dog at home on her own and she wasn't well when I left.
Can I raise one thing because it affects Leslie then under items for information? Is that okay? Because you kindly offered your high ground for November the 11th at 7 o'clock, and it's suddenly getting nearer to November the 11th, and we were sort of jovially saying, what are we going to do, and do we set up the barbecue in the bar, etc., etc.
But I think there was objection to it that there wouldn't be easy access to it by road.
That's true.
So where's the beacon being lit on November the 11th?
I'm still very happy to offer it.
Well,
I
I
don't
think
know. I
people
thought
can
there was a
walk
working
up.
party being set up
Yvonne set up a
Legion.
we set up a working party. It hasn't met. Yvonne's waiting for Colin to come back from his holiday because he's on.
Okay.
No,
Can we get
it's a
into
bit
your
close
place?
now.
I agree with
We
you.
can
It
down
is- the
Acton
months have
Lane.
gone by.
We'll walk up there.
In the dark.
That's all right. Enough
In
of us.
November.
We've had 100 years to plan this.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what I was just thinking, otherwise it'll be October the 9th.
Yes.
Leslie wants to go.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, I've got to.
Just,
We've
I
got
have
a
a
working
problem
party.
when I get home.
No, I
I'd forgotten we had a working
No,
party.
I understand. I'm heading off on holiday anyway for a fortnight on Friday, and Colin comes back about the time I do, or slightly before, and we've then got to try and pull out what we can. George is right. The working party hasn't met. It's been one of those things that slid month by month. Are you around later in the week, or are you going off to London?
We're going to Devon on Friday for a week.
If I manage it, I want to talk to councillors later about a couple of things, and I will give you a shout about them on the phone.
Okay.
Okay.
No,
No, you're entitled to. Leslie will make an exception for you.
Yes, yes.
I'm not going to
Is there someone you're doing?
Yes,
Oh,
yeah. I'm trying to get
come
in.
here, Leslie.
Sorry about
Okay.
that. But the offer's still there for the field if you want.
Thank you.
Okay, all right.
I hope your dog hasn't eaten a planning application by mistake.
Maybe that's why she's poorly. Okay, thank you. Yes, sorry, 1 week from Friday to following
Got it
Friday.
now. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Right, the other item in the task, what Yvonne and I were going to put on the agenda, and then somehow we didn't get round to it, was the task list, which has also been rather left in abeyance for some months. Flicking through it very quickly, just to put it in your minds, what we still, it's not necessarily to be done this year, but it's still things that we said we would work on. We've done the Invicta law. We said we'd get on with the registering land holdings soon. We haven't started that. Well, Yvonne's done some work, but we haven't started going to the solicitor.
No.
I've got a letter for signature today to get stuff in the bank.
Excellent, excellent. This is a good example where Yvonne can only do so much, and it's all clogged up. Branding with PC assets, we said it would go along with the land registration. It will come along. Churchyard wall, we know. Yvonne has said she's got to chase. SIDS is clogged up now by KCC. the Voices proposals, we said that Yvonne and I would have a meeting with Roger Parker to see where we're going and which ones we can say, look, they are not doable. And we've got a date with him for the 4th of October when I get back. FAQs and useful contacts, well, we did half of it, and I think the other half's probably dead. Prepare land for bringing into use as a cemetery, we're on it now. Renovate the bus shelter relies on a survey, we said, to establish the requirements. The green and coronation field, the completion of that, the hedging things, we haven't got onto that yet. The additional names on the war memorial, we're in good shape for that. We know who can do it. We've got the war memorial clean. The biggest issue is space. There isn't a space for the First World War one. There's a space for the Second World War one.
Okay.
And I've raised that from the very beginning, and it hasn't gone away just because people hope there'll be an answer to it. The trouble is that the two lists have got one in the middle.
I've spoken to Burslands and I got the invoice, and he was talking about within the next few weeks. I said that I were away. Could it be beginning of October? And he said, good thing, that'd be a good idea. So should we?
Is the plan still to try and get it done?
Yes,
Is that the
yes, it will
engraving?
be. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, how are we going to
space.
resolve the space issue then?
Well, that's always been the problem.
Well, yeah, I know, but we can't just.
Is there a solution?
What's the solution?
I haven't seen one. I think even if you put the one in for 39.45, I'm not sure if there's another space to put one in there with brackets.
No.
14,
Is there a
18.
side that isn't being used?
No.
Okay. So, going back to because when Tony spoke about this back in the spring, I was a little uncomfortable because the inference was being made that they'd raised it and the parish council had sat on their backside and done nothing. Well, it's difficult to do something if there's no space to do it in.
Well, I said that from the beginning.
So I think we need to. We either write back to them and say we're very happy to do
we
it.
can do one of them.
Well,
We said
put
we
the
would
choice.
do both, and we said that we would go up there with the stonemason and find where we could put them.
Yeah, but what I don't want to do is we suddenly find it's November the 10th.
No, I just say beginning of October.
Yeah, but November the 10th, and it hasn't been done because there was no space. And I think right now we need to let the Legion know formally that we cannot see. Could they please suggest a solution?
If you agree, I mean that's my view.
Because we're willing to do it, but I think they need to. They were the ones that really raised it in the first place.
No, indeed.
So I think that we don't know what the solution is. We haven't got a solution.
So
therefore we put the ball back.
It'll be all right. It'll be all right.
Well then could they please take a photograph and email it?
Dave Fletcher was the one that wanted to be there to help decide.
Yeah. Well, that's fair enough.
Then to get Dave involved and then.
Yeah.
Well, a bit like Sid's. One of them is doable. The other one, I don't see why.
But I don't see it. What I think is if we don't, we need to move towards a decision.
No, you're right.
And it's not just us that's involved in the decision.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Nothing wrong with what you say, Paul.
We don't want to be blamed. That's what you were
Yeah,
saying, isn't it?
yeah.
But it not happening.
Well,
when we
we've
tried
Well, if
everything
you
we
told
could.
us there was no space at the parish council, we'd have understood.
I did. I said it right.
No, I know. But right now we've done the point I'm making is that we've done a great job on the cleaning of it. Looks really good. We'd like to move to the next thing, and in consultation, where would they like the names to go, please? And if there's only room for one, it's really there.
Do you want me to talk to them?
Yeah.
So I'll do that
You know,
initially.
It's room for one, which is a 39.45 war, because that's the list.
Yeah.
I'll go with Dave Fletcher.
You've got a front of it which has got the sort of general inscription. Two sides, I think it is, for 1418 and one for 39.45. 39.45's got a room at the bottom, as I recall.
It's quite a high memorial, can't you go up?
No, panels.
You've got to be, you could put them on the horizontal bit.
And the
or something,
panel, is
couldn't
that removable?
you? No.
Okay.
Faces, we're talking about faces.
There's faces
Yeah.
around the
Okay,
plinth.
yeah.
Okay, the other
Let me
ones,
look into it, Dave Fletcher. And
yeah, the other ones around here are possible after we've done the cemetery is the village pond, but that's years away. Council-owned Christmas lights, we've not said we'd do anything there yet, but it was a suggestion. Sign to the village green and play area is something that we ought to be able to do, but it's not pressing at the minute. We've done no work on it. And the annual drinks party is something we haven't quite got our minds around. Okay, that's all I have got. What I'd like to do now, if everyone is happy, is to more points of information. Please, carry on.
Come on, Yvonne, don't be so shy. Speak up.
Go on, off you go.
PCSO's report.
Yes, indeed.
It's very short. Please accept what I've done now. Crime has continued to remain low in Wittersham and surrounding areas, with few incidents being reported. We would like to remind all residents to stay vigilant. I mean, she says this every time. I'd also like to draw your attention to online crime reporting, which, once again, is on Facebook. That is. So, we've had reports of the nitrous oxide capsules, which are the small cell ones. Unfortunately, the nitrous oxide capsules are not illegal and are easy to get hold of from supermarkets, etc. We are finding lots of them in all the villages. It's just making sure that youngsters know the danger of these capsules. Only once we found 40 up on Coronation Field.
Oh, okay.
Were there 40 soda streams next to them? Or?
No, these are nitrous oxide.
And it's
not CO2.
Cream. It's cream. It's for cream.
Nitrous oxide.
It's the ones that fluff the cream.
Yes, cream whipping.
You know the whipped cream you're using.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got two. I should have brought them in. You gave me two. I've got two.
Tell me, there's no mention then of the lad, little boy, got his bicycle stolen. Then
Yeah.
There's a real disconnect between what's coming through from these guys and what's actually happening.
Okay. Yeah. They didn't say there hadn't been any crime.
Just that it was low.
Okay.
Right, so that's my bit. And then George has got one.
What's that talking about?
We have already said it, actually.
What was that about?
What's that?
But we're going to see the boulder.
Oh yes, the boulder.
Yeah,
yes, we're going to see
bring
it.
that under. You've already
Oh,
mentioned it.
Is that known as a rock festival?
Yeah.
Okay.
Alan.
Boulder, as she said on the.
Not really, no. No, I don't think I got anything.
Okay, Sue?
No.
No.
If that wasn't...
No, we're coming to that.
Okay, right. Good.
Anything else?
No.
So can I close the meeting?
That's
Okay, we'll close it now.
Hang on, 10.
And
Oh, 9.
And
No, quickly, because it's going on.
we close it down.